clerk to just give me the signal when you are ready. I'll go ahead and convene the meeting.
We're ready.
All right. Good evening, everyone. It is 5:03 p.m. and I'd like to call this meeting to order of the East Bay Community Energy Board of Directors. Today is Wednesday, September 21st, 2022. This board meeting is being conducted pursuant to provisions of the Brown Act to facilitate teleconferencing to reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmission at public meetings. AB 361 suspends some Brown Act rules related to teleconferencing, but continues to require that we notice meetings in advance and allow the public to participate. East Bay Community Energy has met all of the applicable notice requirements. We're using the Zoom platform. The information on using Zoom is on the EBCE website at the address listed of the agenda. And during the meeting, if you wish to be recognized, please use the raise hand feature in the participants button in Zoom. If you're calling by telephone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and you can unmute yourself using *6. We will be taking all votes via roll call, and please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. So accordingly, just be aware people may be able to see you and your broadcast may be captured by recording. So at this time, I'd like to ask the clerk to please proceed with the roll call.
Yes, thank you. Alameda County. Alameda County. Albany.
Here.
Thank you. Berkeley.
Here.
Thank you. Dublin. Dublin.
Here.
Thank you. Fremont. Fremont.
Fremont's here.
Thank you. Hayward.
Present.
Thank you. Livermore.
Here.
Thank you. Newark. Newark. We'll come back to Newark.
Uh-oh.
Newark.
Here.
Thank you. Oakland. Oakland. Piedmont.
Here.
Thank you. Pleasanton. Pleasanton. Tracy.
Present.
Thank you. Union City. Union City. Community Advisory Committee. Thank you. San Leandro.
Present.
And Emeryville.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Now is the time for public comment. This item is reserved for persons wishing to address the board on any EBCE related matters that are not otherwise on this meeting agenda. Public comments on matters listed on the agenda shall be heard at the time the matter is called. As with all public comment, members of the public who wish to address the board are customarily limited to 2 minutes per speaker and must complete an electronic speaker slip. Mr. Clerk, has anyone submitted any public comment that is not related to what's on the agenda or a speaker card?
We have 2 members of the public with their hands raised. With regards to public comment, I see there is one comment here from a member of the public. I can go ahead and read that public comment into the record.
Okay, go ahead and take 2 minutes to read that into the record, and then go ahead and call the folks with their hands raised in order after that. Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Great, thank you very much. I am just pulling up the public comment now. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to go ahead and recognize Jane Kelly for 2 minutes. Jane Kelly, you're recognized for 2 minutes.
Jane Kelly. On September 20, we received a press release from EBCE in which the claim is made that EBCE is one of the nation's top clean energy providers. It's difficult for me to believe this claim when EBCE is generating some of the dirtiest electricity in Northern California. You can see that for yourselves on the power content label you're approving tonight. EBCE is congratulating itself on its goal of reaching carbon-free electricity by 2030, but the devastating impacts of climate change are occurring right now. In Pakistan last month, the country was hit with massive floods, killing nearly 1,500 people and displacing tens of millions of people. During this climate disaster in Pakistan, the country is said to have received 8 times more rain than usual. This summer in Europe, the extremely hot and dry weather depleted water in the Rhine River in Germany to the extent that in some cases, not even empty vessels could navigate it. In the Western United States, water is disappearing. In early August 2021, the US Bureau of Reclamation declared the first ever Tier 1 shortage for the Colorado River, based on the agency's projection that Lake Mead would drop below a threshold of 1,075 feet above sea level in January. Water levels in the river's 2 main reservoirs, Lake Powell and Lake Mead, were at their lowest since they were filled. In the face of these global disasters, why is EBCE taking 7 years to make its default product carbon-free? Does that make any sense to any of you? Can the board defend this irresponsible goal when other CCAs in Northern California are already within percentage points of carbon-free electricity, even those that do not have nuclear power in their mix? I appeal to the board of directors to step up and provide the leadership that will truly make EBCE one of the nation's top clean energy providers. Thank you.
Thank you. Blair Beekman. Blair Beekman, you're recognized for 2 minutes.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Happy September to everyone. It's been a while since I've attended a meeting, so hi to everyone. That was a really interesting report from the previous person. She spoke of there can be renewable choices without nuclear in our future that we can do better and learn upon here at EBCE. I will be interested to learn those sort of things. This whole community energy process has been new to me the past few years, so I'm still in just the total beginning stages of learning things. And it's been quite an experience for myself, and I'm glad I've started with EBCE to learn what the future of community energy practices. Tom Kelly appears here often with the same sort of complaints as the previous speaker, and he seems to really be implying, as I felt the previous person would be implying, that it's the fact that we don't talk enough about nuclear in EBCE packaging that is an issue. And the woman very nicely stated in the last her last public comment previously that there can be ways to talk about a renewable future without nuclear, and I would that is not going to offer dirty fossil fuel use. I'm very interested to hear that, what exactly that can be, and what if we can head in that direction. My gosh, that is just everything. That's I really hope you can work towards those ends. And it was mentioned at the CAC meeting yesterday, how your IPR or IRP reporting works for the next 10-year period. I really wish you could be able to offer the public what to expect in the next year with such practices. Good luck how to make that as accessible as possible to the public. I think it's needed information. Good luck how we can practice that sort of information sharing. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica Duvar, you're recognized for 2 minutes.
Jessica Tovar with the East Bay Clean Power Alliance. I just want to, reiterate the East Bay Community Energy Board that within your governing documents, you have committed to actually doing local development community benefits under the local development business plan. Such clean energy programs and projects such as electrification, the community innovation grants, all the different programs, some of which that you have launched as pilots, some of which you have yet to launch. I want to reiterate that $15 million and having a surplus like that, being able to uplift the community benefits that we want to see out of the local development business plan can be transformative in communities that have been disinvested for so long, environmental justice communities. And so just to reground that you are an energy services provider and you have committed to do local development of clean energy in the East Bay community cities that you serve. And so I want to just reiterate that that is where you need to focus, and any surplus of money needs to be invested in the communities that you serve around energy services so that we can make the changes that we need to build resilience so that we can weather the storms that are about to hit our communities and those that have already hit us, including environmental injustice, as well as unemployment and all the other injustices in our communities. Clean power to the people.
Thank you. Tom Kelly. Tom Kelly, you're recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Just on this point about EBCE's emissions, I see on the consent calendar that you're going to approve the power content label, and this year it actually indicates how much CO2 is generated by Bright Choice. So it's 564 pounds of CO2 per megawatt hour of electricity. It's 3.5 times more than PG&E's electricity produces. So, I've been at this, for a long time. I've been harping on it without any real success. So I got to thinking, a city like Oakland that has taken its climate responsibilities, to heart, is actually seeing their overall GHG emissions from electricity increase by 3.5 times, essentially wiping out any gains they've made from any of the other efforts they've undertaken. So maybe my new tack will be to try and work with these jurisdictions that, like Oakland, that aren't on the 100% renewable program yet, and get them to do it themselves rather than trying to rely on EBCE staff to do what, for example, MCE Clean Energy is doing. They're 98% carbon-free, no nuclear. Peninsula Clean Energy, 99.2% carbon-free, no nuclear. Sonoma Clean Power, 92% carbon-free, no nuclear. And PCE will be 100% renewable by 2025. So I don't know what I'm missing here. And I know that you folks are concerned about climate change. So why are we not doing something about it? Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to read the following public comment into the record. I'll give myself 2 minutes to speak. This public comment is from Ellen Marling. It reads, I am in favor of nuclear energy. There is a large amount of fear regarding the technology due to the available heuristic and due to the availability heuristic and the fixation on past disasters on outdated equipment. Nuclear power plants made to new standards are safe and will help avert the climate crisis. This is not to say that we should pursue nuclear energy exclusively, but instead as part of a green energy portfolio with wind and solar. I mention this because NIMBYs against solar farms will often show up and say that nuclear energy is better. I suspect they also attend planning meetings for nuclear power plants to say solar energy is far safer. The reality is that we need both. And that concludes public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk, and thank you to all of our speakers this evening. Colleagues, I did receive a request from staff to move up item 15 because we have some staff who are on the East Coast and we don't, if we can prevent it, we're gonna keep them from presenting at 1 a.m. Eastern. So if there's no objection, we'll take item 15 after item 11. Does anyone have an issue with that? Okay, seeing no objection, let's go on to the consent agenda. Does anyone have anything that they would like to discuss or pull, or any questions or corrections? I actually myself will be pulling item 5, which is the AB 361 findings.
The CAC requests that the power content label item gets pulled.
Okay, so we will pull item 5 and we will pull the power content label. Can I get a motion on the remainder of the consent agenda outside of those 2 items? Vice Chair Lopez.
I move the remainder of the consent calendar.
Seconded, Tracy.
All right, we have a motion from Vice Chair Lopez and a second from Member Ariola. Is there any discussion? And actually, I'm going to go ahead and take public comment right now. Clerk, would you please call the raised hands?
Great, thank you very much. Jim Lutz, you're recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Jim Lutz here. I'm a member of the CAC, but I'm speaking for myself on this one. It's just a request for more information to improve transparency on item 6, the contracts entered into. Some of the items, it's not clear what those contracts are about. There's a CalStart one for 150,000 and an aqueous one, an amendment to the aqueous one that increases at 260,000. So not speaking against it, I'm just asking a request to add a very brief sentence about what the contracts are. That's all.
Great, thank you. Blair Beekman, you're recognized for 2 minutes.
Hi, would this be time to speak to what will be the CAC report and the IRP reporting?
That'll come up later, Blair.
Okay, what can you repeat item 5 really quickly again?
Item 5, we are pulling from the consent agenda, and that is the AB 361 findings for continued remote meetings.
Okay, so are you taking public comment on on all the consent?
On
calendar
everything,
items?
correct. Anything that's on the consent agenda before we vote on these items.
So I wanted to speak, I thought I heard the item being pulled about IRP reporting, and I should wait until that's spoken about.
So there are 2 items that we're pulling off of the consent agenda for further deliberation. One is item 5, as I just mentioned. The second one is item 7, which is the 2021 Power Source Disclosure Annual Report and Power Content Label.
Okay, I will speak with my minute remaining to that subject, item 7. From what I'm gathering already from this public meeting, I have some concerns that we're starting to drift off a bit in how to have conversation about what exactly our nuclear use is in comparison to clean energy and renewable use as compared to fossil fuel use. And, you know, you're building a future where statistics you just given to me are surprisingly, amazingly awesome, that we can talk about a renewable future and a clean energy future without nuclear. But that means that, are you guys going to be hiding a bunch of statistics from myself and from others who are new to the process, trying to learn? You guys have a fuzzy way of working that way sometimes. And I would be really,
this guy is actually, he doesn't bother me.
Hey, everyone. Hey, Dan, I'm muting you, buddy. Sorry.
I need to finish. Can I have a few extra seconds to speak on this subject?
Yes, let's extend Mr. Beekman's time by 15 seconds.
Great.
Thank you. I don't at all want to be hostile about this sort of matter. I want to be really, really honest how we are working the future of these sort of programs. You guys have to make the effort to be accountable and open with the public. Don't play games with these sort of issues, I don't feel. Learn how to practice accountability. It's really, really important, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. No further public comment.
Thank you. That concludes public comment on the consent agenda. We have a motion on the table for the consent agenda items 4, 6, and 8. The motion is by Vice Chair Lopez and seconded by Member Ariola. Please call the roll.
Great, thank you. Alameda County. Alameda County. Albany.
Yes.
Berkeley,
Yes.
Dublin,
Yes.
Fremont,
Yes.
Hayward,
Aye.
Livermore,
Yes.
Newark,
Aye.
Oakland, Piedmont.
Aye.
Pleasanton, Tracy,
Yes.
Union City, Union City, San Leandro,
Yes.
and Emeryville.
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved.
Okay, thank you. So we'll first discuss AB 361 findings for continued remote meetings. I do think we should vote on this and approve the findings for continued remote meetings. However, on a parallel track, I know that staff has been working to get us in person. I would just want to approve this as a backup, but I wanted to make sure I opened this up for discussion. You all should have received an email from our clerk at 3:14 p.m. Just to give you a heads up that he's been working towards getting us back in person, but I wanted to give folks an opportunity to weigh in as to whether a 5 p.m. or a 6 p.m. start time for board meetings would be preferable. And then also, the clerk can speak to this more. There is an opportunity for people to continue to participate remotely, but there may be requirements for notification for those meetings. So I will first recognize CAC Chair Anna Olivia Eldred.
Thank you, Chair Martinez. My friend Cole just died less than 2 months ago from COVID. He was required to go to an event for his work. Every person was vaccinated. Everyone had to show proof of vaccination. He is younger than me, and I am youngish. I no longer get to say young, but I am youngish. And he had no underlying health conditions that they're aware of. The morgues in our area are so backed up, we will not get an autopsy back for 4 months. And having people go back to in-person meetings is, when we have shown that this works very well, is really distressing to me. I am glad to hear that there will still be options for public notice for remote participation, but for those of us who do family care, and like, I have an immunocompromised mom, and so she was hospitalized. If I have to go up and help take care of her, I can still attend, and that has meant a lot to my participation and has not required that I step down, because that was on the table a few months ago. And so it really does increase participation, and it's really distressing to hear that. So that's all.
Member Hannon.
Well, I'm certainly sorry to hear about your friend, and many of us have lost family and friends over the years as a result of this horrific pandemic. And so our prayers and thoughts for you and your family and your friends going forward. Just a clarifying question. It sounds like the meetings would happen formally in Oakland, but that we would have an opportunity to meet at alternative locations such as Fremont. Did I understand the email correctly?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And given a preference, I would prefer 5 p.m. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member Hannon, and Mr. Clerk, I hope you can keep a tally as folks do voice their preferences. Member Monroe.
I have no preference for 5 or for 6. Having it as flexible as possible, meaning if it's possible to do hybrid, that would be great. I thought a whole lot about this meeting in particular, because this is the one that requires me to come the farthest, and Dan is coming even farther. So, I mean, unless we do it in Livermore, in which case, we'll see you for dinner there. But the ability to I'm looking at this group and how far flung we are. Keeping some hybrid option would be great. And I can't remember the legality at this point, but I think that's in the picture. And so if there's any way to do that, I strongly recommend.
Inder, do you want to maybe speak to kind of where we are from a legality perspective? Because that really is the driver here of starting to plan for a return to in-person.
Sure, I'd be happy to. And yeah, unfortunately, this decision isn't necessarily going to be up to the board in the foreseeable future. So as you all know, we've been operating under a state of emergency, a California-wide state of emergency due to COVID. That state of emergency is still in place. While that state of emergency is in place, we can hold our remote meetings under AB 361 by making the findings that we've been making every month. And so that's what we've been doing. And over this past summer, we were all watching the legislature closely to see if the legislature was going to adopt a bill that would allow us to do remote meetings indefinitely in the future. And the answer is essentially no, the legislature did not. What they did do is adopt a bill that allows less than a quorum of the board to participate remotely, but only after you've made some kind of statement or finding that you are either have to participate remotely due to a health issue of your own or a caretaking role in your family or a family medical emergency. The reasons for participating remotely are very limited. And so because of that, we actually felt that the new legislation that's been offered up is actually worse than the original Brown Act rules were for teleconferencing. Let's go back to Brown Act pre-COVID. We could always have teleconference or remote meetings as long as everyone was willing to participate from a location that was publicly noticed and open to the public. And so in a lot of ways, we think moving forward, we wouldn't necessarily, of course, if individual board members wish to participate completely remotely because they have a family emergency or a medical situation, also note that board members can only participate remotely for 20% of any meetings in a given year. So this is like for a group like us where we meet once a month, this is at most you could use this for 2 meetings in a year. And a quorum always has to be present in a physical location. So to address this, that's why you're hearing, I think, staff and the chair sort of recommendations moving forward that we perhaps meet at several physical locations that can be noticed to the public and made open to the public so as to comply with the Brown Act as it was originally drafted in the 1950s. Unfortunately, I will say, I think the new legislation does not allow us to move forward with a hybrid mode that allows board members to participate remotely at their option due to convenience. And obviously I'm just the attorney and the legislature is not looking for my opinion, but in my opinion, this was wrongheaded because of course, many agencies like EBCE have very large geographic territories. And we're not just wanting to participate remotely out of convenience. We would rather avoid driving 3 hours and burning fossil fuels on the way. So to address that issue, that's where we came up with this sort of not exactly a hybrid meeting, but a hybrid approach where we might have multiple physical locations that would be more convenient for board members, but still allow us to provide the public notice that's required under the, what I'm thinking of as, the original Brown Act, and therefore wouldn't require that individual board members have to make a statement about their personal, medical, family situation before participating remotely. And it would also allow us to maintain a quorum of our body in a physical location, several physical locations, so as to actually allow people to participate remotely that way, since remember, you need to have a quorum in a physical location under the new law. So it wasn't to be, it wasn't the result that we had hoped for.
When we say quorum, so currently what I'll say is we have 3 locations that we are planning to have available. One in the South County area. Adrian, I believe it's in Fremont, but correct me if I'm wrong. We have a location in Oakland, and then I believe a 3rd location in Livermore.
In Pleasanton.
In Pleasanton. And then we would, I think, I don't want to presume too much, but if indeed we are to bring Stockton into the program, I would expect that early next year we would add a 4th location in San Joaquin County. So we would have 4 physical locations. Those 4 physical locations would create a situation where it's no more than 10 or 15 mile drive for any board member thereabouts, maybe a little bit more, but essentially no more than a 10 or 15-mile drive for any board member or for any member of the public to go to a location where we're holding this board meeting.
Thank you. And I wanted to check with Inder to see if the new legislation has any implications for the CAC or if they would continue to be able to meet remotely for their meeting.
Unfortunately, there's no exception for advisory bodies, and we will also have to look at going back in person for the CAC. I will say that right now the governor's state of emergency remains in place, and we don't know when that will be withdrawn. I am hoping he will give us some notice. It's the last few months I've heard rumblings that it might be withdrawn in the foreseeable future, and it's perhaps now, or perhaps like very shortly, or perhaps early next year, probably not in the middle of the winter during flu season. So we can continue remotely sort of indefinitely. And I would suggest that we first address the issue of finding in-person locations for the board. And then I think there's some learning to be done here. And then we would follow up by identifying good locations for CAC. But this is going to be a problem, not just for EBCE, but for all of the CCAs that have very large territories. And we're all, and I represent a couple, we're all scrambling to try to figure this out right now. So.
For clarification, Inder, does this override the previous Brown Act provisions that allowed people to participate via teleconference? Oh, you said they could only do it 2 meetings a year. So you could participate via teleconference if you notice your personal location. Let's say you had a family emergency, for instance.
And then it all works together. So AB 361 continues in place as long as there's a state of emergency that we can point to. So that's still in place. The original Brown Act always allowed us to participate in teleconference if we were willing to agendize the locations of the board members and make them open to the public. Under the new rules, individual board members, less than a quorum at any given meeting, could let us know that they just cannot make it to a physical location, perhaps because they have a cold and it's contagious, or COVID, or they have someone in the family and they don't want to come. And then we could accommodate less than a quorum of board members participating remotely, and they wouldn't have to agendize their location, but they would have to make a statement about their situation to justify their remote participation. And they would only be able to do it up to about 2 meetings a year, 20% of meetings. So it's unfortunately a limited exception, and we may still be calling on your alternates to come in situations in which you are indisposed, just so as to make sure that we have options moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Inder. We'll continue with our deliberations. Vice Chair Lopez.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the brief, and I have to say, honestly, I'm a little confused, and it might be good for the board to have a memo or sort of outline various scenarios. The scenario is, let's just say I feel sick to this morning, let's say, and I'm like, could be COVID. I'll know in a few days. So of course I can let my alternate know, and hope that my alternate could come. But, practically speaking, I am, I guess, most concerned for the ability for people who have health issues, to, retain their privacy and be able to participate. And then I'm also worried about the CAC and its ability to congregate given its geographic reach, and and trying to figure out logistics for the CAC, so it's, additionally, like having 3 locations throughout the service area. So, because I would feel really bad if one person would have to drive all the way, let's say, like, Monroe had mentioned, like, let's say from Livermore to Oakland or something that's just so far. So I'm sure that we can find a path forward. Everyone else will, and so shall we. I would just hope, and I hope I'm not kind of getting off of the agenda too much or violating the Brown Act here, but it would be my aspiration that this board, along with other CCAs in the state, would look to add language to or petition via our lobbying efforts to really have special provisions for CCAs like ourselves that do have, far-reaching jurisdictional like geographies that are at play going forward. And I think that what's happening is that maybe the language is being written really with cities in mind, which is a different, logistical situation. And so I don't really know if some of the legislators are aware of how hard it is, with traffic and how unenvironmentally friendly it is, and how much we're dedicated to preserving, our earth and so forth. So those are some of my thoughts. I am supportive to go forward with doing some sort of hybrid approach, if possible, or whenever possible. I would like clarity on just the 2 meeting provision, and my preference would be a 6 o'clock. Thank you. And then, and finally, for those other provisions, for the places that are the 3 locations identified thus far, that they're reachable by public transit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Member Harrison.
Yes, this is pretty unfortunate. Is this, Inder, can I ask, this applies to the public as well? They'll no longer be able to call into meetings?
No, it actually only applies to the board members. We can't allow the public to call in or do a hybrid options for public participation. This is the requirement is with respect to a quorum of the board being present.
Okay, great. That's really helpful. And are there rules about if somebody misses more than 20% of meetings? For example, in this example stated, they find out that morning that they're sick and they've already been sick. What happens in that case?
So the bill was just signed. So, I think there's a lot of, we're going to be having a lot of internal conversation amongst attorneys about exactly what these provisions mean. But I assume that if you've missed 2 meetings already, that your only option is to simply be absent. If you've already been remote for 2 meetings, you don't have the option to be remote for a 3rd. You will have to be absent.
Right. So what I'm asking is, are there rules about the number of meetings someone can miss? For example, someone has had 2 meetings where they were remote because they have health considerations for their parents, for example, and then they need to miss a 3rd meeting because they cannot come in for the same consideration. Are there rules about people being kicked off boards because they missed too many meetings?
No, that rule would have to be in the joint powers agreement. It's not, there is a rule that you're probably familiar with that relates to city council members that only allows you to miss a certain number of consecutive meetings before you're forfeit your office. That does not apply to EBCE or our board. And part of the reason we have alternates, of course, is to allow for normal variations in your schedules, knowing that you're all very busy. So.
Thank you. Given that we have to travel, and I hope to travel on public transit, I'd ask that the meetings be at 5. I'm not comfortable taking public transit home very late at night. So that's going to be an issue for me.
Okay, thank you. Member Ariola.
Thank you. I just wanted to highlight, because San Joaquin County is significantly further, I would be advocating for the 6 o'clock time. Also, we do not have public transit that gets into Alameda County. I mean, let's talk Valley Link at a different time, but it doesn't currently exist. And we do not have strong public transportation even between Stockton and Tracy. So that will be an increased barrier. I know my day job is in Stockton, so I am regularly there. It will be very difficult to start at 5, unless, Inder, if we could have a discussion about what would it mean if we could telecommute at the beginning and end in person. That may be another opportunity.
Dan, what I would say is, we've identified a location in Pleasanton. We are certainly very open to working with any board member to add an additional location. I think there's just some practical logistics around, what kind of technology would you need at a location? But say in your example, with the prospect of Stockton coming, in, if we wanted to move more expeditiously to identify a satellite location in San Joaquin County, and perhaps, for instance, there's a space that the city had to say, yes, we'd be happy to host you for a few meetings, and then eventually when a member of the Stockton City Council is seated. So what I would say is, please do, just, we know where to find you, you know where to find us. Let's have a conversation about whether there's a space in mind that we could implement sooner rather than later.
Absolutely.
Can I add one quick thing? So going back to what was allowed previously, pre-COVID, under the Brown Act, it was always allowed that you could teleconference from your own individual location as long as you're willing to notice it and make it open to the public and have the address on the agenda. So previously, when we had, I've represented JPAs my whole career. We do have ones with large territory, and we would either do the multiple physical locations, or people would participate from City Hall or their county offices in a publicly accessible location that they didn't mind having posted on the agenda. So individually, each board member, if you want to avoid the commute, you can, and you have maybe space available perhaps at your City Hall or county offices that you can make open to the public, we can work with you to turn that into another physical location that you would be allowed to participate from and not have any Brown Act issues. So that's another option. And that also is an option for CAC members, although I recognize that finding that location that you don't mind having posted on the agenda that's open to the public might be a barrier. But I have known, for example, city council members to participate in meetings from a Starbucks open to the public, put something up on the, on the window for a few minutes. And, the reality is, hopefully most people, are not going to actually try to go talk to that person in that public setting under normal circumstances. It's just that the rules say it has to be open to the public and you have to allow public comment at that location. To my knowledge, very rarely does anyone show up to actually speak at that remote location. They're going to come to one of the more central locations. So that's another option that we can consider.
Thank you. And I definitely will be happy to work with you on that. So I would just ask, as we figure this out, that we have it be 6 o'clock while we make those determinations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Member Cox.
Thank you. I wanted to find out, when does this new rule take an effect? And I would like to ask that to our
that's a good question.
attorney.
We don't know is the answer. So what we really don't know is when AB 361 will no longer be an option. We're currently operating under a state of emergency. And with the COVID environment being what it is, the governor has not withdrawn that state of emergency. It's now been in place since March 2020. I haven't heard I've heard rumors, but no official word that the governor plans to end that state of emergency. One of the reasons we're bringing you this conversation tonight is so that we can be flexible and nimble at the time when that emergency is ended and start planning for our next steps. Because actually, it's very possible that this will not legally become a new mandate until next year, but we just don't know exactly when. If you have any connections in the governor's office and you want to send him a nice note saying, please provide cities, counties, and JPAs with notice before you withdraw that order, because we're all remote right now and want to know, that would be much appreciated. So, but that's the limbo that we're in.
Okay, I appreciate your comments and being able to explain this, because this is highly complex. I think from the standpoint of starting time, I would recommend 6 o'clock. I do a lot of traveling, and I am coming from very south to coming very north, even though I'm representing a particular area, to take those things in consideration. And also I would, like to see how maximizing the participation of everyone that's involved on the board, but also CAC, that it's important that we just hold on to doing the remote until the button is fully pushed, and continue in that until we know further. So that would just be my recommendation. Even though we may be assessing other remote locations, why go through the expense of locking ourselves into something like that? Just knowing what the availability is, and not have to incur the expenses until we really have to. So that's just my few comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Kavanaugh.
Yes, thank you. I also want to put in another plug for a 5 o'clock start. And secondly, wanted to see if we're looking to stand up remote locations. I'm wondering if we potentially could partner, this may have been mentioned, but partnering with other organizations such as Stop Waste or other county or regional organizations who are also standing up remote locations, if there's a possibility to share those sites with others, or even identify just best practices that others might be trying to tackle the same issue at the same time. Thank you.
we have been working with other agencies quite extensively. So Stop Waste is one example. And, you know, the challenge we have in any given site is they have their own meetings and they have their own parameters. And so to date, we have not been able to identify another agency that can specifically meet our requirements. That said, I know that there are other conversations that are ongoing with city clerks and other agencies. So, you know, we're certainly trying to find the best options while trying to identify multiple locations that fit the bill. Also recognizing that it's going to evolve over time as well. So, and you know, right now is probably a good time when the rules are still pretty flexible to, for instance, say perhaps only have one physical location because there's not a legal requirement that we meet in person. And, you know, we can work out the kinks at that physical location, but still allow, you know, remote participation as we currently do. And then, you know, with each meeting, add a satellite location with the hopes that by the time the rules change, we have held one meeting at every single satellite location. We've determined whether that's a good location from a transit perspective, from a technology perspective, from an acoustics perspective. And you know, we'll in that situation, we'll be in a good place, you know, come winter and spring.
Okay, thank you. Chair Eldred.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarifications as well. I have some logistical questions. I still have very strong feels, but logistical questions. If any of you are able to help your CAC member by providing a space in your council office or anything like that, that was a really big barrier to participation in the past. Like, it was a significant barrier. The cost of transportation was something that kept folks from coming. The timing was also really brutal. A lot of us don't get off work. Like if it's at 5 and I have to be somewhere physically, I have to step down because I cannot physically get somewhere by 5 p.m. I'm not even usually done with work by 5 p.m. I will continue working after this, and I can do that because I can do it from right here. But like having to go somewhere, it just would not work for me at all, or my alternate. But with the ability to make another place public, that is a possibility. So I'm wondering if there is, if that space has to be in jurisdiction, like some of us have participated in the past from vacation. Like, would it have to be somewhere that's in our service territory, or like Alameda is in Alameda County, but is not part of EBCE's service territory, or my job might sometimes even be in Sacramento or somewhere else. Am I able to publicly notice there and have that qualify?
Inder, do you want to answer that one?
So I think we will have a lot of these sort of logistical issues to look at, but yes, CAC members can participate from areas that are publicly noticed and open to the public, and the public is allowed to comment at. So,
but it could be out of the territory, correct?
Oh yeah, only a quorum of any specific legislative body is supposed to be within the territory. That's a good point, Chair. Thanks for flagging that. So under the old Brown Act, you had to have a quorum in the actual jurisdiction of the agency. And now with the new law, that will go back to that being that way. Whereas under AB 361, we did not have to have a quorum in the jurisdiction of the agency. Luckily, EBCE has a very large jurisdiction. So I would argue that even the city of Alameda, for example, is within the county of Alameda and is within the jurisdiction territory of EBCE, even if the city of Alameda is not a participant. So we could accommodate other locations.
So, so if there's a work thing coming up, and I know that I'm going to be working in Sacramento or Los Angeles or something like that, so long as I can post it 3 days ahead of time, and we're saying arguably absolutely not in the jurisdiction. If I can post it 3 days ahead of time and it is available to the public and there is a quorum of other folks who are physically there, then I would be able to have that not be remote participation because it's publicly noticed.
That's right. I've had members participate from Iceland. You have to wonder what local Iceland natives might have shown up for that hearing to offer public comment. But yeah, you only need a quorum in that jurisdiction, and other folks can be anywhere in the world.
Okay, that can take down some of the barriers. Thank you. I also really, please don't start it at 5. And I think a memo on this would be really helpful. Thank you for the information.
So folks, I'm going to acknowledge the rest of the hands that are raised, but if there are any questions that you can ask to Ender offline, I will just note the time. It's 5:53, and we do have a lot of ground to cover this evening, but I will go ahead and recognize Member Harrison. Your hand is raised. Oh, okay, never mind. Member Monroe.
Two really quick questions, or two really quick comments. I'm hearing 5 o'clock, I'm hearing 6 o'clock. This is a question. Is there a reason we can't do 5:30? A comment, I'm hearing all over the place from all kinds of elected offices that this business of actually having day jobs turns out to be a barrier to participation. I'm pushing at the council level to do maybe something at the state, in as much as we have lobbyists and so on. This might be, this is an indication of, we're hearing the effect on, on people with day jobs of having this kind, the effect of moving back to in-person. This strikes me as being a much larger issue than this, and I'm hoping we can take that up.
Thank you. If you want to add 5:30 to the tally, we can ask the clerk to poll everyone and rank their choices between 5, 5:30, and 6. If we're going to do that. Member Lopez.
Thank you. Yes, Chair Martinez, I'm in agreement with you. I think we need to move this along. And so what would you like?
I would like,
a motion?
I will entertain a motion to go ahead and approve the findings, because we will, regardless if we're going back in person, we need to have the flexibility to have a hybrid meeting. I think what the CEO suggested makes a lot of sense, but we're going to let staff go ahead and explore all of those possibilities and what they're able to accomplish by October. And so, yes, I would love a motion.
Yes, I'd like to move this, but before I do, I don't think this is fully cooked yet. And so if we need to have a whole nother month, I'm very open to that. Just so, that's next month's conversation, right? But I'm just putting this as a placeholder, as it may not be ready. We may not have the logistics all sorted out. The memos may not be clearly understood and be still one question of vetting. That doesn't necessarily mean we're all going to be meeting next month in person. It's just, this is a process, but I'd like to move the finding. Thank you.
Do I have a second? Just a moment, Adrian. Is there a second on the motion?
I can second.
I'm sorry, Anna Olivia, you're not a voting member.
I know, but I'm allowed to make motions, and second, I'm just not allowed to vote. That was clarified at the beginning. I just haven't done it because everyone is fast.
Very good. Okay, so we have a motion from Vice Chair Lopez and a second from Member Eldred, and I'm actually getting a note from staff that you cannot second, Anna Olivia. I'm sorry. So I am going to solicit a second from Member Harrison. Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and I just want to give my comments real quickly. It is hard to, we haven't gone back in my city yet. I'm not the mayor this year, so I'm leaving that in his purview to lead on that issue along with staff. But I do, as Inder stated, we are not going to be able to operate under AB 361 for much longer. And I think it's important to give chance to staff to be able to see what it's like to get us back in person and test out these hybrid capabilities, because I am aware of many hybrid issues in cities and other JPAs, and we want to make sure things go smoothly. However, that is, I like the CEO's suggestion that we, start at least with one location and allow everyone to still participate remotely if they wish. I'll be there in person. But I think it's important to get the process started so that when we have no choice, we will know what we're doing. So Adrian, did you have comments before we take this vote?
Yes, I just want to, Jim Lutz has his hand raised. We want to know if you want to recognize public comment.
Yes, I see that. And we already took public comment for the entire consent agenda. So apologies, Jim, but we need to keep this meeting moving. If with no further comment from the board, Mr. Clerk, I'll have you call the roll on item 5.
Great, thank you. Alameda County. Albany.
Yes.
Berkeley.
Yes.
Dublin.
Aye.
Vermont.
Yes.
Thank you. Hayward.
Aye.
Livermore.
Aye.
Newark.
Aye.
Oakland. Piedmont.
Aye.
Pleasanton. Tracy.
Aye.
Union City. San Leandro. San Leandro.
Aye.
Thank you. Emeryville.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have item 7, which is the 2021 Power Source Disclosure Annual Report and Power Content Label. I believe Chair Eldred pulled this one, so I will turn the mic over to you.
Thank you. So I realized that I sent the annotated agenda out fairly late. I was waiting until after we had completed a meeting I had with staff today because they're awesome. So that will get sent out to everyone and posted on the website. But we received a lot of public comment about this item. There were concerns about our power content label and how it compares to other resources. And there were some really legitimate questions about in-state versus out-of-state power generation and long-term versus short-term contracts. On my end, also some more technical questions. And I think that there's a general confusion around the reporting model. Staff has been really generous in doing their best to explain this, but I think it's important to talk about it in the reporting of annual versus hourly. So our power content label is presented as on an annual basis, our renewable 100 accounts use this much electricity, and we purchase the equivalent of that in renewable energy. So it's listed as 50% wind and 50% solar, but we are not providing customers with around the clock renewable energy, right? Because wind and solar cannot provide around the clock energy unless there's a lot of storage happening. And that is confusing to folks. I think that is a legitimate confusion to people. And with that, there is some also very valid concern about programs that are incentivizing a demand shift to evening hours when we are serving load with brown power. Even if ultimately the equivalent is purchased in renewable energy. The example that I used with staff today was like we have time of use rates and we've got all these programs to encourage electric vehicle owners to charge their vehicles at night, in theory, shifting away from peak energy into a time when energy is less expensive. So that's our economic signal to send. But we're shifting that to a time when we are having to serve the load with brown power. And the combination, especially with these big moves towards electrification, could be a significant shift towards a time of day that we are having to serve with brown power, even if we're purchasing the equivalent in renewable energy. The fact is we're still serving it with brown power. And I just think that's an important thing to bring out and talk about. And the cost of our renewable energy resources is another thing that has been a concern. And just massive props to staff. They did an incredible job. The presentation was one of the best presentations I've seen. It was really clear. It was really thorough. They did a great job answering questions. And so I just really want to throw a lot of like respect in that direction. It was so good. And like there was a concern brought up around like, how come things are costing this? We're looking at the Padilla report and it says that energy should cost this. And the response was the Padilla report has a lag. It's like a 2-year lag. And I don't know if folks in this body are really familiar with that, but this is the cost of renewable energy. Like this is the cost of solar or wind or whatever. And so it's a 2-year lag. And so we were instructed to try and look at current resources. So I pulled the CIA reports and looked at Q1 and Q2, and there's, which is this year, right? Like it's this year's numbers, and there's just nothing that would bring the price of solar or wind to that. So I'm hoping that there can be some clarity that is brought around like why the cost of, even if it's not in this meeting, even if it's at a future meeting, if there can be a way to kind of pull out more what's happening there. Some of that is a fairly technical discussion that looking at tonight's agenda, we don't have time for, but it was asked that we're summarized some of the concerns that are happening around our power content label. And there's some really legitimate concerns that aren't being spoken to in a way that people are understanding, even if a response is being given. And again, deep respect to how staff is responding to things. There's still a significant amount of confusion, not just among the folks who are able to show up, but among other people, like our constituents and the people who we're hearing from have confusion around these same issues. And so I think there needs to be something done to work to explain them a bit better to our constituents, because they're mad, and it's and really rational, engaged people are mad. And so it's something that I hear in multiple venues. And so I just want to bring that forward.
Thank you for highlighting that, Chair Eldred. Colleagues, is there any discussion on this item? Member Harrison?
Yeah, I think I kind of want to resonate with what Tom Kelly said earlier, which is that we see a shift in some cities to 100% renewables, and that's great. But until larger jurisdictions do that, we're going to be in this pattern of having less clean energy because we have more people on Bright Choice. So it's kind of two ends of the thing. You either have more people move to the 100% clean energy, or somehow we do something to make Bright Choice much cleaner, which I don't know that that's fiscally feasible. So the other thing I wanted to mention is that I often get comments, and I don't really know how to answer this. Maybe Nick can weigh in on the 40% unspecified that's included in Bright Choice. That seems to raise people's concerns a lot. And I don't know if we can do a better job of describing what's in there. But that seems to be an issue that continually comes up. So I guess what I'm saying is we're all in this together, and I would like to encourage my fellow jurisdictions to do what some of us have done. We just had, and we're going to talk about this later tonight, we just opted up all our commercial accounts, and the opt-out rate is way less than 1%. So people are with us. They want to see us do this, but we can't do it within Bright Choice, I don't think. So I'm trying to understand a little bit better. Nick, if you have any comments about this unspecified piece, is there something we could do to better explain that? It just raises people's suspicion a lot. They're like, what does that mean?
So unspecified power is market power. So you get an
Right.
average emissions factor. So, we're not buying it from a specific source. We're buying it from the market, and the market has that average emissions factor. natural
is,
gas tends to still be the marginal generator in California. And so it tends to drive the market emissions factor for those market purchases.
okay,
So
are
from a
we
pa-
different than other CCAs and how much we rely on the market as opposed to designated sources? I guess that's the way I'd ask my question.
Well, I think the primary driver, there's sort of three factors when you think about our power content label. One is we do not take an allocation of nuclear. So when you're comparing us to PG&E has, I don't have it off the top of my head because I don't have their power content label in front of me, but it's somewhere in the 30 to 40% of their power comes from Diablo Canyon. So that obviously plays a very large role in their power content label. I believe if you look at, so 30 to 40% of their, so that certainly skews the dynamic between, say, EBCE and PG&E. There are a handful of CCAs in Northern California that also take a nuclear allocation. San Jose, Silicon Valley, 3CE, I believe, does as well. So those are 3 CCAs that do take a nuclear allocation. Again, that nuclear is displacing market purchases from a power content perspective. And then EBCE does purchase some portion of the renewables as PCC2s. So these are renewables that are generated, say, in Oregon or Utah or Nevada, where there's power imported into California, but it's not a dynamic transfer of the renewables. It is a coincident import, but it's not a dynamic transfer. So the result is there is clean energy being generated. There are emissions being reduced. It's just those emissions are being reduced in another state, not in California. In 2020, I believe it was 2020, California changed its emissions accounting standards. So prior to 2020, 2021, PCC2s were counted as emissions, both renewable and emissions free. So when we would use, say, the national standard of the climate registry, and today, if we were to do a climate inventory with the climate registry, they would count a PCC2 as a zero emission resource. But for the purpose of the power content label, we don't use the climate registry sort of global methodology. We use a California specific methodology. Now, again, we know that emissions in Oregon or in Utah or in Idaho are have the same impact on global climate change as do emissions in California. So from a global emissions perspective, we are still driving down overall emissions. So those are really the two primary factors when you see sort of why our numbers look higher than the system average. Nuclear is by far the biggest driver. If EBC were to take a nuclear allocation, our emissions factor would be below that below that average.
Yeah. I think what would be helpful for me to answer constituent questions, and I'm not challenging this, is just to understand how we compare with other CCAs on unspecified and how we compare on PCC2s. You don't have to answer this now. I'm just expressing what I hear a lot of.
Yeah. So what I would say is we're not able to necessarily specify on PCC2s because that's not necessarily going to be publicly reported. I can't go and tell you how many PCC1s versus 2s another CCA. There may be a way to back into it, but it's not a specific reporting or tagging that we necessarily have available to us in those renewable percentages. Again, you might be able to back into it by looking at the renewable percentage.
Can I ask it this way? Maybe do you think that we're less green than overall than other CCAs? I mean, I understand.
I think we have made a decision that nuclear is not green for our purposes, and
no, I understand that.
It really just is a determinant of how do you view nuclear? Because if you think about our level of renewables procurement and large hydro procurement relative to other CCAs, yes, there are some that have more renewables and large hydro than we do, but there are some that have the same, they have equivalent, and there's some that have less. So I think for Bright Choice, we're doing pretty good when your point of reference is level of renewable versus level of large hydro. But then when there's the nuclear question, right? I think if there were some other CCAs that were pointed to as well, they have higher renewable contents than we do. Those are also CCAs that have not consistently offered a discount.
Right.
So
Okay.
MCE and Sonoma were the two that were pointed to. They are both CCAs that have been comfortable offering their base entry-level product at above PG&E rates.
I think we'll get there someday to be comfortable with that. Maybe not yet, but is that something we're...
I think that's a question for you to ask your colleagues in the board.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Marquez.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to thank Chair Eldred for her comments regarding the advisory committee's presentation, feedback, input, and the public comments received at that meeting. I'm wondering, since that meeting was recorded, if there's any way that that video could be shared, and then also want to request, I know this request has been made in the past. I'm looking at our website and we don't have the option to view past meetings. So are we going to ever have videos up? It would just be very helpful for all getting the same information.
Adrian?
If I can go ahead, the Monday CSE meeting is available on our website, and we do have access to prior meeting recordings.
Okay.
I can send you information offline how to access those.
So it is on, if you go to our board meetings and then you click through the past board date, then it will have the YouTube video. We upload it to YouTube.
Okay.
And with Zoom, obviously recording is very straightforward.
Okay, I will play around with it. It's just not easy to locate. I'm just looking for a tab that says video. So I'll play around with it, but I think it's important that we all view that presentation. And I don't know if this is something that we can add for like a work session in the future, just dedicate enough time. It seems like there's still a lot of confusion around this area. Thank you.
I'll note that this is information that we have presented a handful of times. I know it's, I think one of the challenges is there's some aspects of this that folks perhaps don't like versus and that, I think leads to sort of, ongoing consternation.
Could there be an FAQ then around the concerns, just a way to kind of?
Okay. I think that would be a great way for us, because I will say, we've probably answered these questions 4 or 5 times this year in various forms. So we've done it. We did it in February. We did it as part of the joint rate mailer presentation in June. We've done it again here, but I think an FAQ would be great, and we can post that FAQ. That's a great idea.
Okay, thank you.
Chair Eldred.
Thank you. The recordings are very hard to find on the website. They are. And something like a workshop or something like that, especially if the public could be involved, would be really wonderful. It doesn't necessarily have to be a quorumed thing, but even if you've answered the question 4 or 5 times, if there is this level of general confusion, we are smart people, we are engaged people, and I do have a pretty strong understanding of most of these things, and some of it still confuses me. That's a really solid suggestion, and I would be thrilled to participate in even gathering together what I hear is the heart of some of the issues that have come up fairly consistently. So if that would be helpful, I would be into working with staff on that. And that the presentation really was super solid, and the way that that staff member answered questions was really super helpful. So I do encourage you to watch that.
Okay, thank you, Chair Eldred. With that, it looks like we've concluded discussion, and we do need to pass this item. So I will take a motion on item 7, 2021 Power Source Disclosure Annual Report and Power Content Label. Do I have a motion? Member Monroe?
I'll move. I'll move the item.
Thank you.
Second,
Second, was that
Fremont.
Member Cox?
Fremont, that's right. Thank
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Great, thank you very much. Alameda County. Albany,
Yes.
Berkeley,
Yes.
Dublin,
Yes.
Fremont,
Yes.
Hayward,
Aye.
Livermore. Livermore,
Sorry. Yes.
thank you. Newark,
Aye. Aye.
great, thank you. Oakland, Piedmont.
Aye.
Pleasanton, Tracy,
Yes.
Union City, San Leandro,
Aye.
Emeryville.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We are on to the regular agenda and starting off with our CEO report, item 9.
Thank you. And I just actually want to note, Annie did remind me, we actually have an FAQ that we have posted about these power content items. I thought we might, but good reminder. So we can make sure to send out that FAQ to the board. So CEO report, I'm going to be quick here. We have held some subcommittee meetings so far this month. I'm going to just skip through those, though. We did not hold a executive committee meeting in July. We do have one next week. We do have a handful of new staff, which I'm really excited. So Ray Sangoma is our assistant board clerk, and she comes to us from UC Berkeley, where she's a recent graduate. Allison Lopez is our energy efficiency program analyst. Another UC grad, UC Davis. And not listed here are Helen Mejia, who's our building electrification associate or analyst, a building electrification extraordinaire. I'll say if I don't have the specific title in mind. Helen joins us from Sonoma Clean Power. And Niels Zeller is joined us as our director of structured finance. Teresa McDermott is our head of brand. I think that those are the 5 folks that we have hired. I'm sure there are actually some folks that I am not capturing, and my apologies if I didn't remember your name. We'll make sure to mention you next time. On the marketing account services front, we have implemented the changes to our value proposition. So we are now offering a higher discount, or 3% discount. And we have started the process of facilitating $50 bill credits to our CARE and FARA customers. That's a little over 110,000 customers who are going to be receiving those credits. We, as Member Harrison mentioned, things have been going great in our R100 opt-up, our R100 campaigns, very low opt-out or opt-down in many of our communities. And so we're very happy to see that. We did mail out our power content label. So that's something we've talked about. SMUD recently opened an application for call center representatives to serve EBCE customers, and they've received over 1,500 applications total. I know they've received quite a few of those applications. I can't tell you the specific number, have come as a result of outreach that we have done jointly with them in Alameda County and San Joaquin County. So hopefully that process will result in some local hire of customer service representatives. So with that, ready to move on.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have questions for our CEO, Vice Chair Lopez?
Thank you very much for the report on the transition for the 4 jurisdictions, or actually in terms of like Berkeley and San Leandro specifically. Can you give the dates when that will happen for the commercial in October? Is it throughout the whole month or is there a particular date?
Yeah. The way it works is it, it happens, on one day. So from a procurement perspective, on that day, we start only procuring renewable energy on the behalf of those customers. But from a billing standpoint, the billing cycling happens. So the change in the customer bill does not all happen on one day. It kind of happens. It actually won't, strictly speaking, happen even in October because you get your October bill in November.
Okay. Would it be possible, I do see that you'll have the outreach. Would it be possible to do, yeah, I know there was a press release done when the cities opted up by default. Would it be possible to do another one if you have or haven't already planned one?
A press release went, on October 1st.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let us take that back. And I'm not, we may have one actually already planned. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but we'll take that one back and
thank you.
Let you know.
I'm sure it's in the works.
Yeah.
But it's always nice to have some, something that we can, go back to our constituents and say, look, we really are working on our.
Absolutely. And I know we've been doing quite a bit of that. I just can't off the top of my head tell you exactly what we're planning to.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Seeing no other comments, we can go ahead and move on to the CAC report. And excuse me, Mr. Letts, I see your hand raised, but as we don't deliberate on the CEO report generally, I'm not taking public comment on that, but you're welcome to keep your hand raised if you want to speak on the next available item. I'll turn it over to Chair Eldred.
Thank you, Chair Martinez. So we had a really awesome meeting. It was solid. There was a lot of very heavy, fairly technical discussion, and I really wanted to open with gratitude to staff for their participation through that meeting. It was really impressive. Quick updates on things that are not on tonight's agenda. Member Jane Frank, who was vice chair, is stepping down as she has accepted a new position, and we are very excited for her and will miss her terribly. Lisa Hu is replacing her as a full voting member. And I did meet with staff today about what the replacement process can look like for the CAC, as we have 2 alternate positions open right now and no at-large alternates to fill those. We did receive public comments on the public records request submitted by Tom Kelly regarding the proposed $15 million gift to UC Benioff Hospital. And it's been requested that we take a look at how EBCE is functioning in regards to job creation thus far, including union job creation, as well as how we are doing with our organizational equity and inclusion goals, including diversity hire through the entire staff, including senior staff levels. And that is as brief as I could make that.
Thank you. Any questions for Chair Eldred? Okay, we can move on then. Next up is item 11. This is the Stockton JPA membership. I see Alex DeGiorgio is here, and I'm assuming he's going to present, so I'll turn over this to staff.
Yeah, Alex, I think we can be fairly succinct here, actually. I mean, just in recognition of the time, what maybe I'll just say is, it was a very positive meeting we had with Stockton, 7-0 vote. Alex, do you want to maybe start by reading the statement that Dan Wright had asked, or I guess you could read that in public comment?
Sure.
Yeah. So council member Dan Wright from the Stockton City Council had a statement that he wanted to share. He's unable to join us this evening, so he wanted to, I guess, read that into the record. So maybe read that as public comment. But yeah, Alec, why don't you just quickly run through this and then maybe we really move on to Q&A from the board instead of spending too much time kind of going through the slides.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Nick. Good evening, Chair Martinez, Vice Chair Lopez, members of the board, members of the public, Alex DeGiorgio, Public Engagement Manager. Yeah, I'll get right down to it. This evening, your board is asked to consider including the City of Stockton within EBC's Joint Powers Authority and service area, with service to begin in 2024. So procedurally, in order to do this, staff is recommending your board take the following actions. Adopt a resolution to authorize the City of Stockton to join EBCE as a member agency and signatory to the JPA agreement. And in order to implement that, we'd request that you direct staff to update Exhibit A, which is the list of parties to EBCE's Joint Powers Agreement, to reflect the inclusion of the City of Stockton. We would also ask correspondingly that your board direct staff to update Exhibits B, that would be the annual energy usage, and C, the voting shares vote that corresponds to annual energy usage of the Joint Powers Agreement, and to update the agreement with 2021 PG&E electric load data to reflect the inclusion of the City of Stockton. And discussions about these exhibits and the voting shares vote are contained in the staff report. And then lastly, we'd ask that your board direct staff to adopt a resolution authorizing staff to update EBC's implementation plan to reflect the inclusion of the City of Stockton, and that we'll then submit that implementation plan for certification to the Public Utilities Commission. So those are the like the nuts and bolts of the steps to including the city. There is, as you may have already seen, there is a discussion of the collaboration with the City of Stockton, and it's been about almost a 2-year process that the City of Stockton has been exploring CCA, and then in February of last year, they commissioned a study on CCA, and the results of that study kind of led the City Council and staff to decide that the best thing for the city and the quickest way to help the city achieve their goals around energy would be to join an operational CCA, and EBCE seemed like the most natural candidate for that, given that we are already serving the neighboring city of Tracy, and that we serve similarly sized and similarly prominent cities within our service area, and because we arguably have the most demographically diverse population within our CCA, and also demographically diverse in terms of like load profiles and the types of customers we serve, ranging from agricultural, large commercial, industrial, many residential, that sort of thing. So this isn't the first time that as you know, this isn't the first time that your board has considered including new jurisdictions. In 2019, the cities of Newark, Pleasanton, and Tracy all joined, and they've been served since 2021. So I just would like to point out a couple of pages in the staff report. So page 6 of the staff report describes the preliminary results and also the ultimate results of the quantitative analysis that our team developed to evaluate the city's membership, looking at its load profile, things of that sort. And then on page 9, I really would encourage folks to take a look at the qualitative considerations of this decision. There's a lot of time is spent in the staff report to the implications on governance and things of that sort. And then the quantitative analysis obviously looks at load profile and financial implications, but I wouldn't want the qualitative considerations to get lost in that discussion. And those would include things such as diversity, equity, inclusion, and expanding our service area to include the Central Valley and more frontline communities. Same goes for environmental justice considerations. By providing alternatives to fossil fuel-based energy resources in building and transportation and agricultural sectors, EBCE can help advance environmental justice and increase the quality of life for local communities in the Central Valley, just as we are angling to do in our current service area. Programmatically, there's a lot of really exciting collaborations that our team can do with the City of Stockton and Tracy. The other considerations include legislative and political advocacy, and then also just the general proliferation and of public power and energy democracy. When the large, historic, and prominent cities like the City of Stockton and the City of Tracy join California's CCA movement. They help catalyze public power and energy democracy throughout California just by their example. So that I think in the interest of time, I'll pause there and would be happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Alex. I'm actually going to give time to public comment right now. If my colleagues will bear with me, let's get public comment done. Mr. Clerk, can you please first read into the record the comments from Councilmember Dan Wright, then any other electronic submitted comments, and then please address the folks who are raising their hands via Zoom and give everyone 2 minutes each.
Great, thank you very much. So I will start with Councilmember Wright's message to the board. Give myself 2 minutes. Councilmember Dan Wright says, Chair Martinez, Vice Chair Lopez, and members of the board. My name is Dan Wright, council member from the City of Stockton. I am sorry that I'm unable to speak in person tonight. But I am in Washington, D.C., advocating for the San Joaquin Valley as a member of the San Joaquin Valley Regional Policy Council. I enthusiastically support your approval of item 11, Stockton Jpa Approval. Our council unanimously approved this request earlier this month, and we feel Stockton will be an active and supportive member of the Joint Powers Authority. We examined many JPAs before beginning our collaboration with your agency, and I truly believe our partnership will be synergistic and mutually beneficial. Special thanks go to board member Ariola, CEO Nick Chassett, and staff members Scott Haggerty and Alex Igorgio for their guidance as Stockton sought membership in EBCE. I look forward to your approval of item 11, and I am ready to begin work towards full implementation immediately. Thank you for your consideration. And so that is a statement from Dan Wright. We'll pause here, and I will recognize Jim Lutz, Tom Kelly, and Bear Beekman, and come back to read in comments that were submitted as written public comment. Jim Lutz, I recognize you to speak for 2 minutes.
Find the unmute button. I don't know how to lower my hand once I've raised it, but I did have a minor issue with the inclusion of Stockton, and that is, even though there's the expansion of the board is addressed and how that affects voting and other such issues, there is no discussion in the revised JPA on how the CCA or the Community Advisory Committee would be expanded. And that's just a question and a concern, not to hold up the process. I certainly support it, but I wanted that addressed. And that's all I have to say. And if you can lower my hand, I'd appreciate it.
Great, thank you very much. Tom Kelly, recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Adrian. So I wanted to ask the board not to approve this application unless, and I'll get to the unless in just a moment. First of all, Stockton is very different than the Bay Area. That whole Central Valley area needs all the help it can get, both economically and in terms of job creation. And so for the last 8 months or so, I've been trying to get the City of Stockton to reach out to MC Clean Energy to at least invite them to come in and talk to them about their program. An MCE can't come in unless they actually get an invitation. They can't, do a cold call or whatever. The reason why is that MCE's basic default product, which I think I said before was 98% carbon free, is over 12% cheaper than PG&E compared to our 3%. And the reason for that is that MCE uses a cost of service approach to setting their rates. In addition, their carbon emissions are almost none, zero, compared to EBCEs, which, as I said before, are 564 pounds per megawatt hour CO2, which is going to increase the emissions in Stockton to higher levels. So here's my unless. Please do not approve this application unless you can guarantee the City of Stockton that their emissions intensity when they begin their program for their default product is lower than PG&E, not 3.5 times higher, which is going to make it even worse for those communities out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Blair Beekman, you're recognized for 2 minutes.
Hi, Blair Beekman. I just wanted to comment that I thought it was a very nice speech from the person from I have some of the same feelings why I'm just kind of around EBC Energy. Sorry for my beginner's innocence and how I address issues sometimes, but hopefully that can be of help in how to better develop the concepts of openness and accountability with practices. If we have our eye on always wanting to work towards a more open, accountable process, I think that's an important goal we should be all considering. Thank you.
Thank you. Alita Dupree, you're recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Diane Martinez and board members. Alita Dupree for the record. My pronouns are she and her. It's really good to be back with you. I've been reading through this document, and I'm excited about the future of EBCE. I can't say I've ever been to Stockton. Maybe I'll go over there. But we're showing at EBCE that we welcome diverse communities into this enterprise of providing cleaner and affordable and equitable power to a greater number of people and jurisdictions. And in looking at the size of this account that Stockton would bring, will give us some economies of scale, especially considering that Stockton is a Central Valley city. My basic understanding of power transmission and routing and siting of the solar resources is that we can move some more of those solar resources into Stockton. And I have seen in my years of engaging with you of offering a consistent product. If I was in Stockton, I certainly would have spoken up at a city council meeting and say, we need to do this and become a part of EBCE. I've been buying electricity pretty much for about 30 years of my life. And I have solar power where I'm sitting right now. So this is going to offer more and better options for the people of Stockton. I think that this application is worthy of approval, and I'm not seeing a ground to object. I ask for your approval so we can give a notice to proceed and bring Stockton into EBCE and initiate service. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will go ahead. I think that is the conclusion of spoken public comment. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 7 statements of written public comment that I would like to read into the record. I will begin now. Okay, our first comment comes from Larry. Hold on 1 second. Our first comment comes from Larry Walter, who writes, "This is to support accepting Stockton's request for membership in East Bay Community Energy Coverage Area. I think that it is important to expand access to affordable clean energy as widely as possible in California. Thank you." Our second comment comes from Marcy Cates. She writes, "I am a happy EBCE electricity payer. I strongly support including Stockton in EBCE in the EBCE service area because I believe that all communities, especially communities that have not been traditionally underserved, should have the opportunity to get clean, sustainable energy. Stockton should have the benefit of EBC's expertise, just as I do. Thank you." Matt Rainier writes, I support including Stockton in the JPA because it's time to support Central Valley frontline communities in our excellent community choice program. Equity must be a central tenet of climate action, and Stockton is an ideal community to support and help benefit from the powerful CCE we've built here in the East Bay. Thank you. Trudy Garber writes, I support EBCE, including the City of Stockton within our service area. Eric DeGorgio writes, I support EBCE, including the City of Stockton within our service area. Miriam Walter writes, Dear East Bay Community Energy, I believe it is important to bring community-controlled energy choices to as many cities as possible. Therefore, I support allowing Stockton to join. And David Oppenheimer writes, I write to congratulate you on expanding the East Bay Clean Energy Project to Stockton. This is an important step forward addressing climate change. Your foresight is admirable. And that concludes public comment.
Thank you, Adrian. And before we begin deliberations, I just wanted to check in with our general counsel to see if we are able to take a single action to adopt the two resolutions and give direction to staff. Or if
Oh,
we
yes, absolutely. You could formulate a motion to approve both resolutions.
All right, so we will go ahead and bring this back to the board for questions and deliberation. Member Hannon. Can you find the unmute button, Mike?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Alex, could you take a minute or two to talk about the financial stress test? I will tell you I had some concerns when I read that portion of the memoranda. I felt better about it when I saw the last sentence that's indicated that based on the results of the quantitative analysis, staff is more confident that EBC can do so. But I think it's important to go over some of those financial stress tests, because at some point, if any of those become reality, that's going to have a significant impact on the rest of the CCA. Could you talk about that briefly?
Certainly, Director Hannon. Thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, so our data and analytics team they model all sorts of scenarios, particularly those that involve wholesale energy market pricing, as well as the power charge and difference adjustment, the good old PCIA. And so the financial stress tests involves, and these type of stress tests, they don't just do for the inclusion of new communities, they do it generally. And so that involves seeing what it would do to our net position if, for example, wholesale energy market costs increase dramatically, or similarly, if PCIA, if the PCIA increases dramatically. And one thing to recognize here is that these tests, they look at those scenarios over an extended period of time. So we're not talking about typical market fluctuations where there's a heat wave and prices go up and then the heat wave's over and they start to resume. We're talking about like major catastrophic situations in which you have elevated costs for an extended period of time. So those are the types of kind of modeling that our team did to assess those scenarios.
And a quick follow-up question. Do we know what the non-payment to PG&E for the residents of Stockton has been historically over the last 1 to 3 years?
I'm not sure that we know what the non-payment has been.
Or the delinquency on current energy?
So I believe that we know that for our own service area historically. And so we could use that as a proxy.
We do not, Mike, we do not actually, that was not data that was given to us. The data that we get typically is historical. So we don't get sort of live information though for that. We've looked at kind of Tracy as a proxy, not that Tracy is the right proxy, Dan, but it is the closest analog that we have. So, and I know we did, I don't know, I think it was more qualitative, but looking at, number of care customers in Stockton as sort of a proxy, but it was not explicitly evaluated in the memo.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Member Ariola.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to take a moment to thank staff and everyone who did the work coming out to Stockton. I was able to join you in Stockton in front of their city council. And I just want to reiterate to this board in particular that their city council voted unanimously in support of this, which is very different than the situation with the city of Tracy, where it was a very close vote. So I'd really like to encourage this board to accept Stockton because, you know, they are a much more progressive city in the city of Tracy. They had a lot more community support. And ultimately, I think that if we as an organization have a mission of encouraging environmental justice, we need to recognize that the studies have been done. And in the Central Valley, because of our geographic area, we simply don't have other options. So the options are EBCE or PG&E. The other studies were deemed to be unviable with other options. So when Stockton comes to the table, if we truly are invested in the equitable distribution of environmental justice, then I would ask that we step up and accept the city of Stockton, just like we did with the city of Tracy. So thank you for the work that has been done. But if we truly are interested in a mission of pursuing environmental justice, then I would ask that you include the city of Stockton. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Ariola. Member Marquez.
Thank you. I just have a question about the shares vote. It's my understanding that we've never implemented that, but can you just help me understand that further? Should Stockton be added? Is that something that will be implemented moving forward?
It would not change the way the shares vote works with Stockton. The only change to the shares vote would be Stockton would now have a share in any weighted vote that could be called. So it's not that there would be a weighted vote. It's just Stockton as a member of the board. And I believe, I'm not recalling, I believe that the weighted vote does not trigger until we start serving load. Remind me, or is that not the provision? Am I misremembering that? Inder, do you recall?
I believe the staff recommendation is that Stockton would receive a load based on their current data, but that it would be up to the discretion of the board. You could opt to have their share of the weighted vote kick in only after implementation. But staff recommendation, as described in the staff report, and Alex is nodding, correct, Alex, is to give Stockton a weighted vote from day one.
And that was the precedent set when the cities of Tracy, Pleasanton, and Newark joined in 2019.
That is consistent with what we've done with prior agencies.
Okay,
but just to reiterate, we have not actually used weighted votes. That comes up only in a situation in which the board members in a majority vote opt to go to weighted vote in order to see, instead of voting one per member, we would then basically be voting based on energy load or the population of your cities. This has been very, very rarely invoked in CCA history. And not to my knowledge, I was not here for 1 year of your history with EBCE ever.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Lopez.
Thank you. I have a clarifying question. It's on page 54 of our packet. It's in the table that's been provided about the timeline. And so that's 2023. The city of Stockton is entitled to a seat on the board of directors. May I ask when in 2023 that would be?
Yes, so a board director can only be seated once we receive certification from the California Public Utilities Commission. And so typically it's taken about 2 to 3 months for that process to play out. So, depending on when we can submit the application, we have to submit it by the end of the calendar year, but hopefully we'll do so well before that. And last time we went through this process, we submitted the implementation plan in December. And I believe the new board directors were sworn in March. So we have to wait until we receive that certification from the CPUC. But after that, the city can select a board member.
Thank you. And just a quick comment. I'm very excited for today. I think this is a big day for us. I remember when we were just a steering committee looking at forming this JPA and this CCA, and all the visioning that happened about it being all that it could be. And I'm so happy to see today come. It's a big win for on so many levels, some of them which have already been discussed today. And I do hope, and I know that this is a timeline and there's been a lot of work, and but I do hope that in the future that this trajectory will continue in that county, because it gives that folks in that county an opportunity to participate in really a vision that I think is very progressive in a place that doesn't have a lot of options. So thank you very much. And I will later on be enthusiastically voting aye on this. Thank you.
Very good. Seeing no other hands raised, I'll give my comments now. Just want to extend my appreciation to staff for being so diligent with this, and to Member Areola for being our real advocate on behalf of East Bay Community Energy and showing up in person at their meetings. And I know that all of this work had a real impact on them, because I was able to tune in and, at least by Zoom, watch the deliberation, and the community and the council there is really excited about this possibility. And I think Stockton, not only having a population that's been impacted by pollution, they're at a nexus of emissions with where they're at with highways in California. So I'm excited to support this as well. And it looks like we have one more board member hand raised, Member Cox.
Thank you. I was going to ask if we could call a motion.
Yes, please. If you're welcome to make that motion, as long I would recommend that it include both resolutions and bullet points with direction to staff for the exhibits that need to be adjusted.
Okay. I would like to make a motion to adopt both resolutions to authorize the City of Stockton to join the EBCA as a member agency and signatory to the JPA agreement, and as well as noted, to direct staff accordingly as reported to be able to take the action that has been discussed at this meeting tonight.
Great. So we have a motion on the table. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion by Member Cox, a second by Member Areola. Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Great, thank you very much. Alameda County. Albany.
Yes.
Berkeley.
Yes.
Thank you. Dublin.
Yes.
Dublin. Thank you. Fremont.
Yes.
Fremont. Thank you. Hayward.
Aye.
Hayward. Great. Livermore. Livermore.
Enthusiastically, yes.
Great, thank you. Newark.
Aye.
Oakland. Piedmont.
Aye.
Pleasanton. Tracy.
Yes.
Union City. San Leandro.
Super enthusiastically aye.
Great, thank you. And Emeryville.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, Alex, please report back to them that passed unanimously amongst those present. So it's a match. All right, so folks, thank you for your patience on this issue. We are actually going to hear another item out of order and have item number 15 queued.
Diane.
Yes.
Given that I think we may have somewhat lengthy discussion about item 12, which is an action item, and from an info item perspective, I did also want to ensure that we had time to cover item 14 as well. I was actually going to ask that we cover item 12 and then perhaps take item 13 last.
That is fine with me, as long as you're communicating with our staff who are on the East Coast who will be presenting 15.
Yes.
Okay, without any objection from the board, let's go ahead and do it as you recommended. So,
Jason?
Yes. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the board. I'm here to present item 12, which is a credit facility action item. We are asking today that the board adopts a resolution authorizing the CEO to finalize and execute a revolving credit agreement with Union Bank. We currently hold a credit facility position with Barclays which extends a line of credit of about $80 million. We entered into this agreement in March of 2018. It was $50 million then. We amended it in August of 2019, which the amendment was to add a portion of that $50 million to be available for letters of credit to be issued as instead of cash collateral. And in that process, we were also able to lower the interest rate and negotiate for a lower reserve fund holding. It went from 17 million that we were holding down to 7. Then in January of 2020, we had a second amendment, which increased the capacity to 80 million. We increased this capacity because this was at the time that we were planning to include the new communities of Pleasanton, Newark, and Tracy. And so we wanted to expand the facility to allow the addition for some additional cash liquidity and as a kind of fail-safe position. And with that, the 60 million would be available for cash, and we expanded the letters of credit to 35 million. The cash portion of this agreement expires in December of this year, and the letter of credit portion of this agreement expires in July of 2024. Barclays has opted not to renew any credit exposure to the CCA market. They were the holder of debt for Western Energy bankruptcy, the one and only CCA bankruptcy that occurred in 2021. And that was the decision not to continue in the space was made at an executive level. And that was, to be clear, that the factors that led to Western Energy's bankruptcy are not factors that necessarily pertain to us. They were in a unique position starting up right in the middle of COVID and then hitting into a very substantial heat wave before having any capital procured. So in light of Barclays' decision, we issued an RFP to solicit offers to replace this facility and possibly expand upon it. We conducted uniform interviews with all applicants, and that led into some rounds of negotiation with some finalists. We did some additional vetting, including, investigating the finalists' ESG goals, their adherence to the RFP details itself, and of course, we had an applied scoring rubric and methodology. And so with this, we came to the decision that Union Bank would be the most, had the best offer at the time. Okay, great. Yes, we're on the right page. And in addition, we were working to upgrade the facility because we are exposed to a number of financial risk factors, considering that we're now expanding and accepting Stockton, which is fantastic. That does increase some of those risk factors somewhat, as Director Hannon pointed out, and so a larger facility will help hedge against that. Some of these risk factors are more volatile market conditions, and then in particular we're looking for there's the possibility of some regulatory risk coming down regarding what load serving entities such as ourselves will have to post as collateral. There is some anticipation that that's going to increase significantly, and we can use these letters of credits from this facility in lieu of cash for posting this collateral. At any rate, the terms of these new facilities is actually quite favorable. The undrawn fee, which is just the fee to hold the letter or to hold the credit available to us, is at 0.25%. This is significantly lower than our current Barclays facility, which is at 0.95%. The letter of credit margin is 1.4%. So that means that any letter of credit that we issue, we pay 1.4% interest on that balance. This is also lower than our current Barclays facility, which is at 1.7%. And then cash draws, if under the condition that we would have to draw cash, this is also a fairly favorable rate, which is the SOFR rate, the secured overnight financing rate, which as of September 9th of 2022, when I prepared the memo, it was 2.28%. I checked it today, it was 2.29%. So it's still an applicable rate. And plus that additional marginal rate of 1.4%. And these rates are on the condition, of course, that we keep our S&P rating at the A level. These rates will slightly increase if our rating gets lowered, but there's a maximum rate at which they would charge if given that it reaches should totally unforeseen circumstances occur and we do reach a lower level, the lowest level of rating, which is the BBB. Additionally, there's no reserve requirement associated with this facility. So that means that we will not have to reserve any cash to serve as collateral against it. A default, as I was mentioning before, if we reach that lowest level possible, would result in an increase of the undrawn fee and the margin by 1.5%, and an increase in the SOFR, an additional adder of 2%. I do see that Ms. Lopez has her hand raised. I'll take the question.
Chair, may I?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Just a quick question. What if the opposite happens and our credit rating improves? What happens then?
Yeah, there is no improvement on the rates, but that could be good if we decide to negotiate for any amendments.
Would your suggestion be to do that at this point in time or in the future, or what would be?
Right. So the addition of amendments would require some sort of material change to the agreement that we're seeking.
Okay.
Such as if we wanted to change the credit limit. Currently, and I believe I haven't said this yet, we're asking for a limit of 200 million. So from 80 million to 200 million. If we wanted to lower that or increase it, then that would be, and we had a credit rating increase, then that would be the time to negotiate for new rates.
Okay. So, but a credit rating improvement would not be material enough for an amendment at that point in time?
That's actually a really good question. It may be. And I think that's something that we would probably have to kind of do a temperature test at the time.
I think and that's something that we've done in the past with getting an investment grade credit rating, and having sort of a general pulse on the industry and talking to various banks. So I think we'd be able to assess at that time if we felt like we could get a better rate based off of a credit improvement, either with a formal credit rating change or even other metrics that may be improving on our balance sheet that may not even have a formal credit rating change. So that's something we've done very consistently, as Jason summarized, with prior amendments that we've done. The Barclays facility itself, we amended 2 or 3 times. So I think we would anticipate that here as well.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, very good question. given that these are more favorable terms than the current facility that we have, we are also required to provide good faith estimates, which is similar to stress testing. We have to provide the worst case scenario, so to speak. And this is provided to us by our financial consultants, so it's independently provided. And it assumes that that upon the day of signing, we draw the maximum amount and hold that for the full 3-year term of the agreement. And in which case, the total interest, let's see here. So so section D really kind of has that dollar amount. So the total interest payments would be $22,080,000 on the $200 million facility. And this again assumes the standard SOFR rate mentioned before, our maintenance of an A rating, and again, drawing that full amount for the full 3 years. Some additional charges, we are anticipating about $125,000 for legal and consulting and upfront and kind of closing fees. This is also has to be reported. And then we went a little bit beyond this and performed, a couple of extra scenarios. So such that if no cash was drawn and no letters of credit were issued, that we just held it as an insurance policy. The maximum interest for the full term over the 3 years would just be the undrawn fee. And that would be about $500,000 a year or $1.5 million over the 3-year terms. Notably, this is a much larger facility at $200 million, but it is still $210,000 less than our current agreement with Barclays if it was held for the same duration under the same conditions, which was $80 million. And then considering a reasonable scenario where we actually issue $50 million of letters of credit against the facility, but no cash draws, we would expect the full term of interest to be over the 3 years about $3.225 million. And so this has been presented to the Finance and Administrative and Procurement Committee as an informational item on September 16th, 2022. Overall, they asked some pretty good questions, to which I have included the answers in this presentation.
Great, thank you, Jason. Did they make a recommendation?
It was an informational item, so we did not officially ask for a recommendation. But I don't see why we couldn't have, but it wasn't asked for.
Okay, very good. Colleagues, with your indulgence, I'll ask for public comment first on this item. Mr. Clerk, has anyone submitted any electronic comments on this item that need to be read on the record or submitted speaker cards at this time?
There have been no written public comment for this item, although there is one hand raised from a member of the public.
Okay, go ahead and recognize that member of the public for 2 minutes, please.
Great. Alita Dupree, you're recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you again, Chair Diane Martinez. Alita Dupree for the record, Sheen Hart. This is showing that our business of serving the public with electricity is growing, and our infrastructure has to grow with it. And part of our infrastructure is the various mechanisms that we need to have in place in order to move money around in a bidirectional manner, in a manner timely. And much like electricity demand going up and down, their finance goes up and down. And so as we grow, we have to have the facilities to allow us to perform those functions so we can continue to pay our bills on time. And certainly it looks like this deal was negotiated favorably with some better interest rates and lower carrying costs. I think it is a good insurance policy to have. I mean, in an ideal world, hopefully we never have to draw it. But if we do, it will be there because we want to continue to have the good reputation of paying our creditors on time. And certainly anything we can do to improve our credit rating will help. So this is one of the things that most people don't think of and don't see. But really, being in the electricity business is about things that people don't see. So all we want to do is flip the switch and the lights come on. So I'm looking forward to getting this thing turned on so we can continue to move money around in a timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment.
Thank you. That will bring us back to the board for deliberation. I'll first recognize Member Hannon.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. It was an informational item at the FAP. If a vote had been taken, I certainly would have supported this. I think Barclays put us at a disadvantage by opting out, and real credit to staff, not only in negotiating a new agreement, but one which, in my opinion, has much more favorable terms in the long run. So just real kudos to staff for fine work, undoubtedly under a stressful situation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other members with questions or comments? I just have one comment. Jason, do we have, thank you, by the way, for negotiating this and for the presentation. Do we have anything in our financial policy regarding what the specifics of our ESG screens are, or do those just go based on the mission of the agency?
Yeah, so we don't have an official policy per se. We did look at, emission reduction targets and parent corporation establishment policies.
Okay, thank you. Well, that answers my question. Colleagues, if there's no further discussion, we do have a resolution before us to authorize staff to move forward with finalizing and executing the revolving credit agreement. Do I have a motion?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'll make that motion. Mike Hanna from Newark.
Great, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second Marquez Hayward.
Great, we have a motion from Member Hannon and a second from Member Marquez. Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
Great, thank you very much. Alameda County. Albany.
Yes.
Berkeley.
Yes.
Dublin. Dublin.
Yes.
Thank you. Vermont.
Yes.
Hayward.
Aye.
Livermore.
Yes.
Thank you. Newark.
Aye.
Oakland. Piedmont. Piedmont. Come back to Piedmont. Pleasanton. Tracy.
Yes.
Union City. San Leandro.
Aye.
Emeryville.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Other
Mr.
people
Clerk.
present.
Thank you. And that will bring us, we are skipping item 13 for this moment, and we are moving to item 14. This is an update on EBCE's electric vehicle fast charging network development.
You're welcome.
Turn it over to staff for a presentation.
Great, thanks very much, Adrian, for pulling up the slides. Good evening, I'm JP Ross, Vice President of Local Development with East Bay Community Energy, and I'll be speaking tonight about plans for developing our public EV fast charging network. This is an information item, so we'll be bringing more back to you, but we wanted to make you all aware of some of the efforts that are underway currently. Next slide, please. So our plans are to build a network of publicly accessible electric vehicle fast chargers across the territory so that we can enable transition to clean electric vehicles for all of our renters for all of our residents, with a specific focus on renters, access to Charging infrastructure is one of the main reasons why people highlight a hesitancy towards purchasing electric vehicles. And that is especially prevalent with people who rent their homes and don't have access to plugging in a car at their house. So this is really also to support you, our cities, as you strive to achieve your climate action plans and focus on transportation as the largest emitter of emissions, both GHG emissions as well as particulate emissions in the county. And will help us meet our California state mandates for zero emission vehicle adoption, which will result in a couple 100,000 vehicles at least by 2030 as part of the state's 5 million vehicle target. And then most recently passed law to require that 100% of all new vehicles sold by 2035 will be electric. We've also seen very rapid adoption of electric vehicles as they are a far superior driving experience, and new and used, especially used electric vehicles, are coming back onto the market and becoming more accessible. So our plan is to develop 40 to 50 charging hubs by 2030. And those hubs would have a minimum of 10 dual port fast chargers, meaning we could charge 20 vehicles at a single time in each one of these stations. So that would be a very dense network of accessible charging infrastructure. And our goal is to provide that fuel at cheaper than the competition and make electricity and driving electric vehicles more affordable for everybody. Next slide, please. Adrian, next slide. There you go. Thanks. So we're currently partnering with many of you right now as we're entering our phase 1 plans to develop our first set of chargers. And that strategy really revolves around working with you and accessing city-owned assets, parking lots, parking garages, libraries, other areas with large lots where people are coming and parking at city-owned facilities. And that's going to help really drive and deliver this cheaper fuel. And cheaper fuel will certainly assist people in buying vehicles and driving those vehicles on clean electricity. So we're currently engaged with the following list of cities. Our plans are certainly to have charging infrastructure in all of our 15 member jurisdiction areas, and that'll be 16 as well once Stockton comes fully aboard. So we really wanted to be developing this across the full territory to enable this transition. And so lots of conversations are underway with your staff as we move this forward and pursue site licenses so that we can progress the development process across lots and garages in your cities and the county. Next slide, please. So the site selection process has a few main criteria. So we have shown in the past our site selection model, which we continue to add data to, but one of the main attributes that we've been focusing on is our multi-unit dwelling hotspot map. We have built this, it's internal, it's proprietary, and it helps us identify where we see multifamily dwelling hotspots, where there's high density of multi-unit housing, and those residents are particularly constrained unable to charge at home per se. And a reminder that about 47% of our residents are renters, and our multifamily housing stock is very old. So 90% of our housing stock is over 50 years old, built before 1970. And that means that installing infrastructure and providing electrical charging opportunities at these buildings is difficult and very expensive. And so providing publicly accessible 24/7 charging infrastructure is really the best way to provide ubiquitous charging opportunities for all of our customers. And we also see through the DMV registration data that we have gotten from the state that there is a significant lack of electric vehicle registration at these multifamily buildings. And so EV uptake with renters is hindered, and we need to address that. And this is our mechanism of doing that. The sites are also in downtown areas where there's retail and walking amenable amenities like retail, dining, libraries, and such. And then we're also looking at filling gaps where existing charging stations are not located. So part of our mapping exercise is, again, looking at the multi-unit dwelling hotspot and identifying where there is kind of charging deserts for these high density multi-family dwelling areas, and then looking for locations to build out charging infrastructure that serves those areas. Next slide, please. So the scale of this, our eyes are big and our sites are large. We want to really tackle this challenge aggressively. And so we want to do that and not necessarily put in all of the capital up front by EBCE to build all of this infrastructure ourselves. So our plan is to use a tolling structure, which is a contract structure that we've used frequently for on the procurement side of the organization. And so we would be bringing in a counterparty to develop, own, and operate these assets, and basically promise us an uptime guarantee, availability commitment, so that we know this charging infrastructure is available at a very high rate. Over 97% is what we're currently focused on. This is a structure that is pretty common in the utility space, but has not yet been used for fast charging infrastructure. But we think it's very amenable, and so we're looking and talking with several counterparties now who are bringing in kind of infrastructure level capital as well as development expertise, who we are planning to work with and select a vendor to progress with this tolling structure. We also are certainly looking at other federal funding opportunities like the Inflation Reduction Act, which has significant funding for DC fast chargers, especially in disadvantaged communities, and tax credits. And we as a public agency can't take advantage of those tax credits. So having a private entity to partner with can really help bring down the cost of these assets. And then our goal would be to sign a 10-year contract with a counterparty with a not to exceed of $3 million a year. So over the 10-year contract, we'd commit $30 million for this public electric vehicle charging infrastructure. But that's the worst case scenario. So as we bring customers in who are using our infrastructure, that creates revenue, and that would reduce that $3 million expense. Our goal is to actually make money, or hope to make money off of this, and partnering with you to drive utilization while still providing discounted electricity to our customers for charging the increasing adoption of electric vehicles throughout our territory. So we'll plan to bring this back to you all as we progress. We're currently in discussions with some counterparties who we've solicited proposals from, and we wanted to bring this to you for information. And that's it. I'm happy to take questions.
Great, thank you, JP. Colleagues, I will ask for public comment first. So, Mr. Clerk, has anyone submitted a speaker card or electronic comment on this item?
There have been no speaker cards submitted, but we do have 2 hands raised for public comment.
Okay, go ahead and recognize those in order for 2 minutes each.
For 2 minutes each? Yes,
correct.
Thank you. Great, thank you. Leader Dupree, you're recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you again, Chair Diane Martinez. Alita Dupree, for the record, she and her. This is very good, and I'm looking forward to when we can develop this into an action item. I've been involved with electric vehicles in some way for 20 years. So I've never owned a full-size automobile. Had a couple of electric bikes and scooters and stuff like that. But I have been a renter my whole adult life. And having a place to charge, if you go back 10, 15, 20 years, is a challenge. The technology is evolving. to where I think soon we're going to see charging, not all the way, but up to maybe about 80%, which will be roughly comparable to the time it takes at a gasoline station. And so this is a sea change that I think is going to tip the balance in favor. And I do ask that as we develop these charging stations, we want to have the best charging stations we can, but not just about being fast, but having a very good energy storage component to it. Because there are issues of demand draws on the grid, especially with what we've seen with the heat wave. But people will still need to charge their cars, just as they need to go to the gas station. So I certainly think that we ought to look at good, robust energy storage systems where this can help our charging networks to have a positive effect on the demands of the grid. We can actually get the cleanest and least expensive energy by developing our own localized storage along with this. So this is a good start. Someday I want a fast charging electric vehicle of my own. Maybe I'll rent one. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Jim Lutz, you're recognized for 2 minutes.
Yeah, Jim Lutz here. I'm on the Community Advisory Committee, at-large member. We didn't see this presentation at the CAC, so but I'm excited to see it, and I have some questions about it. I assume we'll see more of it before the next meeting. Has there been any discussions about finding, and I'm sure some of the cities have it, daytime commuter parking facilities of their own, and to use that to take advantage of the daytime cheap and clean power that's already available? And on the contracts going forward, is there, I don't know, a technology advancement rider if you get to, if the vehicle to grid technology advances, will EBCE be, you know, in the next 5 years, will EBCE be able to take advantage of that, consistent with the customer's EV charging preferences, of course? And so, thank you. And again, JP, this looks great.
Thank you very much. Blair Beekman, you're recognized for 2 minutes.
Hi, thank you, Blair Beekman. Thank you for noticing I submitted a comment card and raised my hand. I just wanted to quickly comment a thank you for this item, and boy, a reminder that 6 or 7 years ago, it was really hard to talk about charging station issues in terms of equity and in terms of how it could be placed in lower income neighborhoods. And I think we made a pretty important effort to work towards those ends in the past few years. And what Alita Dupree has noted, it seems like it's succeeding, and it seems like there's a promising, interesting future for this sort of work. I just wanted to remind the importance of working on equity issues, I think, and what that works towards and accomplishes for all of us. And there's a car going by right now, scooter. So just thank you overall, and good luck in continued efforts of what can be equity practices and how we address our community energy future. Thank you.
And that concludes public comment.
Thank you. JP, do you want to take an opportunity to respond to any of the questions brought up by our public speakers? There was one about storage, there was one about daytime commuter parking facilities, and there was one about V2G.
Sure, I would say, yeah, we're certainly thinking about all of those things, you know, you know, the locational strategy that I laid out, you know, I think meets the obligations on the daytime commuter. We have talked also with BART as an option, but you know, right now we're focused on our city sites, and certainly batteries and V2G will be things that we're evaluating. This space is evolving extremely quickly.
Great, thank you. And I'll just note that some of our federal funds have been pointed towards access that's close to highways. And I think I want to appreciate our staff for doing the opposite of making things more convenient for people who live in suburbs who are driving long distances, because we should be concerned with VMT as well as clean charging. And I think we're taking a really innovative approach that I hope will scale. I will recognize first Member Cox.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you so much to Vice President JP Ross for he and his team for the efforts that they've made on providing us this update on the electric vehicle fast charging network. I wanted to get an idea in terms of, it's noted in your presentation that a lot of the buildings are 50 years old. Is this something that it's going to be included in your solicitation package, that whoever is the winning or successful contractor for performing this work, are they including some of the changes or helping us on sharing the cost on some of these upgrades to support these new technologies that are associated with these multi dwelling sites?
Council member, I'm sorry, board member Cox, the 50 years was in reference to the multifamily dwellings. These projects are actually not being built in those multifamily buildings. The 50 years was referenced to because many of these buildings are old. It is infeasible to install new electric infrastructure within those buildings, and so it's all the more reason why the residents there require public infrastructure like that which we are seeking to build.
Okay, so it's on the public networks, but it all kind of ties in, I guess, into where, it's close to some of the dwellings where people will need to have access to charge their vehicles. So I was just trying to understand that part of it. And
yeah, so I don't, upgrading the multifamily is not contemplated here. There may be some upgrades that are contemplated at the premises where the chargers are being installed. So, you may need to build a new transformer. As an example, there may be some electrical equipment that needs to be upgraded or replaced. But that
so
would
if
be
it touches the building, so I guess what you're saying is if it touches the building, it's going to be the building owner's responsibility, where you're separating that responsibility on just the pure installation. It's only for the contractor.
Yeah. Well, we would not be building any of these stations in buildings.
Right.
So
I understand that,
yeah.
But it's going to be near places that
It will be close.
Exactly
right. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure I was understanding that. The other part was understanding. I noticed that you had your first phase 1, and of course, I'm representing Newark as well as some of my other fellow board members are representing areas like Newark and Dublin, to say a few, and Stockton, soon to be, that were not listed in your phase 1. And I was trying to understand in some ways, how was it decided in terms of setting up the list of the cities that were selected to go to phase 1 versus phase 2 or phase 3?
So
what was some of your criteria?
Yeah, so the criteria was very much willingness on the cities to prioritize working with us. So, we did not engage with Stockton because, they only today did we know that they would become a member. But we engaged with every community, one or multiple conversations with, city staff who we all have very good relationships with. And the list that was identified here were the cities that, indicated an interest and then followed up with us to, move forward with, prioritizing a project. And so, this is very much similar to the approach we've taken with our municipal solar and storage, where, we have a handful of cities that are in our first phase. And it's really because those cities, when presented with the opportunity, prioritized working with us to identify sites. That certainly is not to say that, that there will not be future opportunities. It's absolutely our intent to build this infrastructure in every one of our communities.
I understand. Just always willing to see how we could always push it forward.
Yeah, no,
And
absolutely.
get moving forward. And if there's some other assistance that you need, please feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to help in any way. And I know you're leveraging a lot of city-owned real estate as assets as your site host. So I do appreciate that. I think one of the other things as you are going out in the solicitation, is this also including any repair and ongoing maintenance that will be included in these fast charging networks?
Yeah, so because we don't intend to own the infrastructure, the third party would own them. What we're contracting for is availability. So kind of embedded in the availability, if you're going to guarantee that these stations are available 97% of the time, within that, there's significant, operations and maintenance. That's actually why we sort of prefer this contracting approach, because it actually creates a very significant financial incentive for the operator to maintain these things to the highest level possible.
Okay, and I'm assuming it'll be the 99.9% uptime, of course, in that regards. Was there any local preference giving to some of the third parties that are going to be possibly looking at supporting this, that they're located in some of the cities that are with East Bay Community Energy's region?
So I would certainly expect that the contract, the folks that do the electrical contracting and perhaps even some of the equipment providers will be local. This is a pretty nascent space though. So when we think about the development capabilities and the financial wherewithal to make these investments, we did not explicitly state a preference one way or the other. We engaged with, I would say, 10 different counterparties, mostly financial counterparties, because in the end, what we're looking for is a financial investor. And it's sort of finding the entity that we think is the right counterparty to invest $15 to $20 million to build this infrastructure. And then, as we identify that right investment counterparty, work with them to select all of the various providers, equipment providers, construction providers, operations and maintenance providers to, maximize local benefits.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Member Cox. Vice Chair Lopez.
Thank you. Just a request for in a future packet. One of the things that happened in San Leandro, and we were able to kind of move forward with this, is really somewhat of the turnkey nature of this partnership for the city. And, with many of our cities having challenges with staff resourcing and some of the in-house expertise or lack thereof, EPCE really brings that to the table in terms of value add. And so just wondering if perhaps there can be a way of describing why it makes sense to do this with EPCE, and then how monetarily money the cities save by partnering up with EPCE. I basically am asking this is just because one of my fellow council members basically was under the impression that we should go out to the market and see if we could do better than EPCE, which I was very shocked by. Don't know if he understands really what that we are EPCE. We would be like looking to compete with ourselves, but it just helps me to be able to go back and explain to some of my colleagues that are not really, in these meetings and so forth, And I think looks like it's a path forward for San Leandro, but I think for the other cities going forward, it'd be really good, to generate interest, especially in phase 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Hannon?
Yes, JP, thanks for the report. A couple quick comments. I agree with my colleague in Fremont. If you're presenting something to our city staff and they're not expressing the same interest that we as board members might be expressing on something like this moving forward in our community, it would be helpful for us to know that so that we can advocate on behalf of the community as a whole, because we're not certain what priorities our staff has and where this falls into that mix. So please do let board members know when you reach out to our communities and you're not receiving a favorable response or no response. We'd certainly like to know that so that we can assist you in kind of getting more cities to participate. As we build new multifamily rental properties, do you have a suggestion or an estimate as to the number of charging stations that we should look for the developer to build on the private property side relative to the number of units that they're proposing to build? Do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, so there's actually Cal Green standards already for new construction. So a lot of the new construction already has kind of state requirements for electrical capacity as well as even EV charging. So that's why, our note was that the building stock as it is being very old is not an area where we're focusing our energies, and instead we're focusing on public lots and garages. We have been supporting cities on reach codes, and those reach codes that we've helped to draft do have some EV standards that do go above and beyond state code. So that's another opportunity if you want to kind of push the envelope a little bit. I would just note, the phase 1 cities are really the list of cities that we'll plan to come back to you with for our first sites. That doesn't mean that everybody else said no thanks. It just was, these are the first subset of cities where we kind of have the most progress with. And, we want to work with everybody. We want to have, 60, 70, 80 sites that we can choose from by the first quarter of next year. So this is by no means, we'll see you in late 23, 24. It's much more just kind of, we didn't want to surprise anybody with the first set of cities that we expect to have site licenses with in the coming months.
I appreciate that. My last comment in your slide, you talked about the affordability as we put these electric vehicle structures on public property for the use of renters. Talk about the affordability of using these facilities.
Yeah, so the better deal we can get and the more uptime we can get will increase usability because people have confidence in the chargers. The fact that we can access real estate, in partnership with you all and not have to pay for it means that that's money that can be effectively given to users of those charging infrastructure because we don't have to pay, for site licenses and leases. Our expectation is to be, providing this fuel cheaper than the private sector market. A couple reasons for that. One, it's in our interest, it's in your interest to do that. We don't have a profit-making motive. And two, we don't have margin stacking because we buy the electricity. And so we can also be smart and strategic about how we set our customer-facing rates to, drive behavior around charging in the middle of the day. As Mr. Beekman had indicated earlier, I believe, or Mr. Lutz, how do we incentivize daytime charging? People make decisions based on their pocketbooks. We get the cheapest electricity during the day. We send price signals through to people. That's when they can get $2.50 fuel versus $3.50 fuel. So we'll have some time of use type of thinking around our retail pricing strategy, but the goal is to give customers cheaper sources of fuel than they can get at the gas station.
And you would anticipate that the pricing will come back to this board at some time in the future. The rate structure, the pricing.
Yeah, so I think as we develop these stations, how we price these things will be part of the discussion with the board. I think it's going to be dynamic. So I don't know that we would come and say, we want, here's every single price. It may be we want to provide a range of options, and so we would seek some flexibility to try different pricing strategies to encourage adoption. but that will be, something that will come back to this board kind of when we have charging stations to start thinking about pricing.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Member Harrison.
I wanted to thank the staff at EBCE for their incredible work on this, and to Director Lopez for the colleagues that said, why don't we just go out and bid? We don't have the technical expertise in our cities to do this work. We wouldn't be able to do it without EBCE. We don't have the modeling of where they're needed. We don't have the pricing models. And I think we would frankly be taking the cleaner if we work with the private sector. So I appreciate the deal that's been set here, which involves cost sharing. Our city and others that are participating will be paying towards this, which gives money to EBCE. And the other reason is because I want to support the EBCE mission. So, going to the private sector is maybe, I don't know, maybe it would be cheaper. I kind of doubt it. But in any event, it wouldn't be supporting our mission as an agency. So again, thank you, Nick. Thank you, JP, for all your incredible work. And I'm really looking forward to this becoming a live reality in all of our cities. Thanks.
Great. I'm just going to tag along with those sentiments of Member Harrison that I just think the what we're doing with the modeling and knowing exactly where the need is with the multifamily hotspots, that's really granular data that I don't think anyone else is doing. But we can set this example, and once we get this going, hopefully be able to encourage other CCAs or other co-op type entities across the nation that this is a path forward. We need all of this DC fast charging. It is one of the 3 biggest obstacles to someone purchasing an EV and getting off of their internal combustion engine. We need to help people move along that way. So the market's moving there with providing the vehicles, and the affordability is going to get there with all of the incentives that are coming down the pike. But we need to make sure that people feel able to charge. And I think that it's really, really great what our staff has been able to do. I do have one question for staff is what's our current thinking on what the live price signaling is going to look like? Is it going to be signs? Is it going to be alerts? Is it going to be an app that directs you towards the cheapest charging? Like, how are we going to get
I think it's a great question, Diane. It's definitely something that we're thinking a lot about. I have this crazy idea that I want to put billboards up that sort of look like gas station marquees, but that show how much cheaper it is to charge. So look, there's quite a bit of marketing that needs to be done as we also start rolling out this infrastructure. We figured we first start with actually getting the infrastructure kind of plan in place, financed, cited, and then kind of turn our attention to pricing strategies and marketing. But that is kind of going to be the next big one of the next big pushes here. Certainly, one thing, because this is an informational, I do just want to sort of note is we kind of have 2 different sort of decision-making options in front of us. One decision-making option is in the next 2 months. So, in October or November, while we still have this current group of board members, we would come back to the board seeking an action item to delegate to staff to negotiate and execute a tolling agreement to build, call it 10 of these charging stations with an identified counterparty with some terms specified, many of the terms specified, perhaps not all of the terms specified, and kind of a not to exceed annual cost associated with those charging stations. That's something I would expect we could do in the next 2 months. The second option would be to fully negotiate the agreement with the counterparty, with all the sites fully priced, and so it's a firm price. That's something we would likely not be able to do until Q1 of next year. So with quite a few new board members. I think both options have their merits, and this is not an action item, but, I do want to note that, if there's a strong preference for giving this board an opportunity to, giving this board an opportunity to take action, then, we will go down that path. Obviously, you can always elect to not act and defer it to later. But that is sort of the one kind of piece of feedback that would be useful.
So colleagues, I know that I have a preference to make sure that we're affirming this work that is definitely laid out as, part of our strategy to adhere to our long-term development business plan. It's definitely reaching a niche audience of folks who have not been early or first adopters on the green revolution because frankly, they weren't catered to. It's all of the renters and all of our communities who have no place to keep their car at night where it'll get an 8 hours of charge at a level 2 charger. So, I think it's kind of revolutionary and groundbreaking what staff has proposed. And I want to give them the support so that they need to keep the ball rolling. Member Monroe, do you have comments also?
So I think what I hear you saying is let's vote on it sooner rather than later. And so I was going to say, I agree with you. But also for a very selfish reason, which is that I actually want to do this. I'm very excited to see Livermore on the list of early adopters. I know we've been working hard on our climate action plan. And so being able to sort of, carry this to not completion, but to the next step would be really nice. Having said that, if that changes, if for some reason this ends up not being a neutral situation for EBCE, so that it's better to put it off, that's obviously the better thing to do. But other things being equal, be fun to do.
I think that's right. And so, if this could come forward as an agenda item for this board to consider, if there is a good reason for us to change our minds and punt it down the road, we'll have the opportunity to do that at that time, excuse me. All right, so seeing no further discussion, thank you for that lively presentation and discussion. We could go ahead and move on to item 15, and this is our update on integrated resource planning analysis.
Let me ask this question before we jump in here. This is not an action item. This is an informational item. Given the hour, we could elect to present this at our executive committee meeting next Friday. And then, this will be coming to the full board in October.
Vice Chair Lopez?
Yes, I would be amenable to having that brought back to the executive committee as its chair.
Okay. Is there any objection to going to executive committee? Member Hannon?
No objection, Madam Chair, but if there are speakers that wanted to speak on this item, I'd certainly suggest that we allow them to speak. Thank you.
Very good point. Thank you. And so just to be clear, we're talking about item 15. This is the IRP, correct, Nick?
Yes, IRP.
Okay, so at this time, I will ask if there is any public comment on the IRP. And Mr. Clerk, I do see a raised hand. If you'd go ahead and recognize Blair Beekman for 2 minutes. And if there are any electronic comments, please read those into the record.
Great, thank you very much. Blair Beekman, you're recognized for 2 minutes. 1 second.
Hi, Blair Beekman. The mute's having trouble here. Hopefully,
okay.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. The mute's acting weird. The mute button. Hopefully, good this time. Yeah, really, really smart and nice of you that you figured out that as you're going to put off this item to the executive committee that you allowed public comment at this time. That's really good public procedure work. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to offer thank you for your patience with myself. Boy, I'm really a beginner at this stuff, and so my words can be a little sharp and strong, and I hope they can be taken accordingly, and I will try to practice accordingly. This item was brought to CAC a few days ago, and I really hope that you can work to share its how to talk about its what sort of items can be publicly accessible in say 2023 and into the future. I think it's important. I understand it's a balance. Good luck on how to create that balance of public accessibility to talk about how you can plan and share that with the public for the next few years and into the decade. And from that, and overall, it was mentioned after my previous comments today that there's a community response that really needs public accountability and how to better talk about, you know, your nuclear issues and how to talk about energy disbursement concepts. And good luck how we can make it an open, accountable process in our future. I'll be interested in how we do that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Clerk, were there any electronic comments submitted?
There were no electronic comments submitted for this item.
Okay, thank you. That would bring us to item 13. Nick, are we prepared to?
We were gonna defer this item as well.
Okay, would this one go to executive committee or would this go to the next board meeting?
The next board meeting.
The next board meeting. Colleagues, is there any objection to that? Just noting the late hour. We've been at it for 3 hours already. Would anyone like to hear the legislative update? All right, looks like we're okay to punt on that one. But I will allow for public comment, and noting the hour, I will just give 1 minute for public comment on this issue if there's anyone who has submitted a speaker card. And I don't see any hands raised. Okay.
There's
one hand raised, so go ahead and
public comment.
Yes,
Great.
recognize that speaker for 1 minute, please.
Okay. Jim Boots, you recognized for 1 minute.
Just a real quick question. SB 846, which permits Diablo Canyon to be up for another 5 years. Has anybody looked at what the impact on the PCA charges will be because of that? And that's a question I don't need an answer here, but it seems like an important one for EVCE to find out. That's all.
Thank you. That's actually a great question. It's something I was going to bring up on future board agenda items. So I will do that. And you'll get that answer when the rest of us do.
Okay.
Okay.
One more hand raised. Blair Beekman, recognized for 1 minute.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. To further add to the Diablo Canyon extension issue, thank you. Just that they have initially made it for a 5-year period. That option may very well end up becoming a 10-year period, but I like that they've initially started with a 5-year plan. And just a good luck to ourselves that I hope we can make it just a 5-year plan, and they're at least doing it in the right order and procedure. So thank you for that. I thought I would offer that at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes public comment.
Great, thank you. That'll move us to item 16, which is board member and staff announcements, including requests to place items on future board agendas, and I'll just kick it off. That was a note that I made to myself. For those of you who are not state policy wonks who stay up in the middle of the night watching Senate and Assembly proceedings, Senate Bill 846 did pass in the middle of the night during a long votorama. I'm glad I didn't stay up because it was like 1 a.m. for the Senate and then 3 a.m. for the Assembly. But there were only 3 legislators who voted against that extension of Diablo Canyon. And it made me very curious about those impacts and how that'll affect our CCA. So I would like to ask for an informational item to be provided by staff at a future meeting that would give us an analysis of what possible impacts there might be on the PCIA, what possible impacts there might be on our power mix, and if there's any briefing that was available to legislators that, you know, help them with their vote that night, because it was definitely a surprise for me. So if there's support for that, we'll go ahead and ask for that as a future agenda item. And actually, I'll just ask if anyone objects to that, and you can let me know. All right, seeing no objection, we'll go ahead and put that on a future agenda, and that will just be an information item. Chair Eldred, do you have a comment?
Just very quickly, yeah, absolutely support that. Also, the CAC was hoping that we could look at a trailer bill to look at CCAs being relieved of the Diablo extension portion of the PCIA, as that is such a significant amount. And the rest of the legislative stuff, I can try and attend that meeting.
I'm sorry, just for clarification, Chair Eldred, does a trailer bill exist, or I'm
Nope,
not sure what you're asking?
Not yet.
So what are you asking for staff to report on?
Whether or not it would be feasible for us to, like, through our lobbyists and through like Cal CCA, to put forth or to try and find a sponsor for a trailer bill. There's a significant support around that. I imagine there would be significant support around that from other folks who are going to be really negatively impacted by this impact on the PCIA.
So would you like to have that conversation at the CAC?
No, we're just, as part of the future legislative, because we knew that it had passed and that likely there was not time yet to do an analysis. The members of our committee who do stay up late at night and watch those things put forth a recommendation that staff look at or think about if that is a feasible option. So just when they're doing the analysis of that bill and bringing something back to here, to include in that consideration of if a trailer bill is something that might be feasible.
Okay, now I do, because sorry for my confusion there. So just staff have that they'll just include that possibility in whatever analysis comes back.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any items or announcements? All right, well, seeing none, we will go ahead and adjourn to Wednesday, October 19th. It seems that it's not if we had a consensus around what time we wanted to start. It sounded like there's still some deliberation. Mr. Clerk.
Yes.
Was there a winner on your tally?
I think that 6 o'clock barely is winning. It's close.
Well, I just want to note, just importantly, that if we do have a meeting on next in October on Wednesday, unless something different happens and the governor rescinds the emergency order, it would be the same format, Zoom format, with an optional opportunity for anyone who optionally wants to attend in person. There's an optional opportunity to attend in person, with Zoom still being the default for participation. And so that would be the expectation. So in that sense, starting at 5 or 5:30 or 6, because again, it's optional. So, if there's any question of, well, gosh, I have a hard time getting somewhere at 5, well, don't worry about it. You don't, there's not a requirement by law. And then the thinking being, with each meeting, we might add one additional site so that we get while again, the legal requirement is this. We can continue to do it by Zoom. There's no need to notice a special location. There's not kind of these legal parameters that are, I think, complicating this whole process, have not come into effect yet. So it's sort of like just getting the practice in and making sure, working out some IT kinks such that, if we show up next month at the location and, the internet doesn't work very well there, as an example, well, we all have the ability, we could all, go to a cafe or go to the EBC offices and all sit in different rooms and Zoom in, and that would be permissible because we're still operating under sort of this framework.
That's true. I do think, I think it would be good practice to get onto the time that's going to work eventually for most people, because that's in practice, that's what staff is going to have to prepare for. And that's what even those folks who remain at home, that's the time that they're going to have to prepare for too. So I would prefer to get majority support for whatever time it is. And we can leave it open-ended for now. And if folks want to, if they didn't weigh in tonight, if they want to weigh in with Adrian over email, he'll keep a tally, and then we'll close in on that and share that time with everyone. I'm one of those people who could do either time, so I'm not going to weigh in. I abstain on this one. But I do want us to set a time and for everyone to know what time that is with a couple of weeks advance notice. I think that would be helpful. So we adjourn to a time between 5 and 6 on October 19th. Well, I hope to see you all there, either on Zoom or in person. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Good week, everybody.
Have a good
I had one more comment off the record, which is,
Sure.
for those people who want to go to Starbucks or Pete's or whatever, and notice that. My question is, do they need to pay for the refreshments for all the people who are going to show up or not?
I don't think that's in the bill.
It's not legally mandated, but that could be a follow-on bill, just saying.
Oh, there we go.
Ender,
Work on it.
yeah, and Ender, would we be able to submit for reimbursement? That would be the real question.
That's the question.
I leave that issue for another day.
There we go. Have a good month, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Was I able to share the positive news about Reverend Chambers?
Oh, go ahead.
So,
For the president.
For folks who didn't know, Reverend Chambers was one of our original CAC members. He's a pastor in West Oakland and is just an amazing man. He successfully received a kidney transplant donated from his daughter early this month. They're both recovering well. They actually did a newspaper article on it. He is the head of the Interfaith Council of Alameda County and a fierce housing and environmental justice advocate. And we are really, really glad, because his transplant had been delayed twice due to cancer and some other things. And so for those of you who've worked with him, he is healthy and recovering, and still the same sarcastic, awesome man that he always is. And so for all folks who signed his card and sent love his direction, thank you so much. And we are really happy to report that he is doing well.
Great. Can you send me the newspaper article?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, all.
Right.
Great.
Thank you.
Everyone.